The French Revolution, A History by Thomas Carlyle. Volume 3, The Guillotine. Book 1, September. Chapter 1, The Improvised Commune. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Peter Dann. Book 1, Chapter 1, The Improvised Commune. Ye have roused her then, ye emigrants and despots of the world. France is roused. Long have ye been lecturing and tutoring this poor nation like cruel uncalled-for pedagogues, shaking over her your ferulas of fire and steel. It is long that ye have pricked and filliped and affrighted her, there as she sat helpless in her dead cerements of a constitution, you gathering in on her from all lands with your armaments and plots, your invadings and truculent bullyings. And lo now, ye have pricked her to the quick, and she is up, and her blood is up. The dead cerements are rent into cobwebs, and she fronts you in that terrible strength of nature which no man has measured, which goes down to madness and Tophet. See now how ye will deal with her. This month of September 1792, which has become one of the memorable moments of history, presents itself under two most diverse aspects, all of black on the one side, all of bright on the other. Whatsoever is cruel in the panic frenzy of 25 million men, whatsoever is great in the simultaneous death defiance of 25 million men, stand here in abrupt contrast near by one another. As indeed is usual when a man, how much more when a nation of men, is hurled suddenly beyond the limits. For nature, as green as she looks, rests everywhere on dread foundations, were we farther down. And Pan, to whose music the nymphs dance, has a cry in him that can drive all men distracted. Very frightful it is when a nation, rending asunder its constitutions and regulations which were grown dead cerements for it, becomes transcendental and must now seek its wild way through the new, chaotic, where force is not yet distinguished into bidden and forbidden, but crime and virtue welter unseparated in that domain of what is called the passions, of what we call the miracles and the portents. It is thus that for some 3 years to come we are to contemplate France in this final third volume of our history. Sansculottism reigning in all its grandeur and all its hideousness, the gospel, God's message of man's rights, man's mights or strengths, once more preached irrefragably abroad, along with this, and still louder for the time, and fearfullest devil's message of man's weakness and sins, and all on such a scale and under such aspect, cloudy death birth of a world, huge smoke clouds streaked with rays as of heaven on one side, girt on the other as with hellfire. History tells us many things, but for the last 1,000 years and more, what thing has she told us of a sort like this? Which, therefore, let us too, O reader, dwell on willingly, for a little, and from its endless significance endeavour to extract what may, in present circumstances, be adapted for us. It is unfortunate, though very natural, that the history of this period has so generally been written in hysterics. Exaggeration abounds, execration, wailing, and on the whole, darkness. But thus too, when foul old Rome had to be swept from the earth, and those Northmen and other horrid sons of nature came in swallowing formulas, as the French now do, foul old Rome screamed execratively her loudest, so that the true shape of many things is lost for us. Attila's Huns had arms of such length that they could lift a stone without stooping. Into the body of the poor Tatars, execrative Roman history intercalated an alphabetic letter, and so they continue T-A-R-T-A-R-S, a fell Tartarian nature to this day. Here, in like manner, search as we will in these multiform, innumerable French records, darkness too frequently covers, or sheer distraction bewilders. One finds it difficult to imagine that the sun shone in this September month as he does in others. Nevertheless, it is an indisputable fact that the sun did shine, and there was weather and work, nay, as to that, very bad weather for harvest work. An unlucky editor may do his utmost, and after all require allowances. He had been a wise Frenchman who, looking close at hand on this waste aspect of a France all stirring and whirling in ways new, untried, had been able to discern where the cardinal movement lay, which tendency it was that had the rule and primary direction of it then. But at 44 years' distance it is different. To all men now, two cardinal movements or grand tendencies in the September whirl have become discernible enough. That stormful effluence towards the frontiers, that frantic crowding towards townhouses and council halls in the interior. Wild France dashes in desperate death-defiance towards the frontiers to defend itself from foreign despots. Crowds towards town halls and election committee rooms to defend itself from domestic aristocrats. Let the reader conceive well these two cardinal movements, and what side currents and endless vortexes might depend on these. He shall judge too whether, in such sudden wreckage of all old authorities, such a pair of cardinal movements, half frantic in themselves, could be of soft nature. As in dry Sahara, when the winds waken and lift and winnow the immensity of sand, the air itself, travellers say, is a dim sand air, and dim looming through it the wonderfullest uncertain colonnades of sand pillars rush whirling from this side and from that, like so many mad spinning dervishes of 100 feet in stature, and dance their huge desert waltzes there. Nevertheless, in all human movements, were they but a day old, there is order, or the beginning of order. Consider two things in this Sahara waltz of the French 25 millions, or rather one thing, and one hope of a thing. The Commune, municipality of Paris, which is already here, the National Convention, which shall in few weeks be here. The insurrectionary Commune, which, improvising itself on the eve of the 10th of August, worked this ever-memorable deliverance by explosion, must needs rule over it till the Convention meet. This Commune, which they may well call a spontaneous or improvised Commune, is, for the present, sovereign of France. The legislative, deriving its authority from the old, how can it now have authority when the old is exploded by insurrection? As a floating piece of wreck, certain things, persons and interests may still cleave to it. Volunteer defenders, riflemen or pikemen in green uniform or red nightcap of bonnet rouge, defile before it daily, just on the wing towards Brunswick, with the brandishing of arms, always with some touch of Leonidas eloquence, often with a fire of daring that threatens to out-Herod Herod, the galleries, especially the ladies, never done with applauding. Addresses of this or the like sort can be received and answered in the hearing of all France. The salle de manège is still useful as a place of proclamation, for which use indeed it now chiefly serves. Vergniaud delivers spirit-stirring orations, but always with a prophetic sense only, looking towards the coming convention. "Let our memory perish," cries Vergniaud, "but let France be free," whereupon they all start to their feet, shouting responsive, "Yes, yes, Paris notre mémoire, pourvu que la France soit libre." Disfrocked Chabot abjures heaven that at least we may have done with kings, and fast as powder under spark we all blaze up once more, and with waved hats shout and swear, "Yes, nous le jurons, plus de roi," all which as a method of proclamation is very convenient. For the rest, that our busy Brissots, rigorous Rolands, men who once had authority and now have less and less, men who love law and will have even an explosion explode itself as far as possible according to rule, to find this state of matters most unofficial, unsatisfactory, is not to be denied. Complaints are made, attempts are made, but without effect. The attempts even recoil and must be desisted from fear of worse. The sceptre is departed from this legislative once and always. A poor legislative, so hard was fate, had let itself be hand-gyved, nailed to the rock like an Andromeda, and could only wail there to the earth and heavens. Miraculously a winged Perseus, or improvised commune, has dawned out of the void blue and cut her loose. But whether now it is she with her softness and musical speech, or is it he with his hardness and sharp falchion and aegis that shall have casting vote? Melodious agreement of vote, this were the rule. But if otherwise, and votes diverge, then surely Andromeda's part is to weep, if possible, tears of gratitude alone. Be content, O France, with this improvised commune, such as it is. It has the implements and has the hands. The time is not long. On Sunday the 26th of August our primary assemblies shall meet, begin electing of electors. On Sunday the 2nd of September, may the day prove lucky, the electors shall begin electing deputies, and so an all-healing national convention will come together. No marque d'argent or distinction of active and passive now insults the French patriot, but there is universal suffrage, unlimited liberty to choose. Old constituents, present legislators, all France is eligible. Nay, it may be said the flower of all the universe, de l'univers, is eligible, for in these very days we, by act of assembly, naturalise the chief foreign friends of humanity. Priestley burnt out for us in Birmingham, Klopstock, a genius of all countries, Jeremy Bentham, useful jurisconsult, distinguished Payne, the rebellious needleman, some of whom may be chosen, as is most fit for a convention of this kind. In a word, 745 unshackled sovereigns, admired of the universe, shall replace this hapless impotency of a legislative, out of which it is likely the best members and the mountain in mass may be re-elected. Roland is getting ready the Salle des Cent Suisses as preliminary rendezvous for them in that void palace of the Tuileries, now void and national, and not a palace, but a caravanserai. As for the spontaneous commune, one may say that there never was on earth a stranger town council. Administration not of a great city, but of a great kingdom in a state of revolt and frenzy, this is the task that has fallen to it. Enrolling, provisioning, judging, devising, deciding, doing, endeavouring to do. One wonders the human brain did not give way under all this and reel. But happily human brains have such a talent of taking up simply what they can carry and ignoring all the rest, leaving all the rest as if it were not there, whereby somewhat is verily shifted for, and much shifts for itself. This improvised commune walks along, nothing doubting, promptly making front, without fear or flurry, at what moment soever, to the wants of the moment. Were the world on fire, one improvised tricolor municipal has but one life to lose. They are the elixir and chosen men of sansculotic patriotism, promoted to the forlorn hope. Unspeakable victory or a high gallows, this is their meed. They sit there in the town hall, these astonishing tricolor municipals, in council general, in committee of watchfulness, de surveillance, which will even become de salut public, of public salvation, or what other committees and subcommittees are needful, managing infinite correspondence, passing infinite decrees. One hears of a decree being the 98th of the day. Ready is the word. They carry loaded pistols in their pockets, also some improvised luncheon by way of meal, or indeed by and by traiteurs contract for the supply of repasts to be eaten on the spot, too lavishly, as it was afterwards grumbled. Thus they, girt in their tricolor sashes, municipal notepaper in one hand, firearms in other. They have their agents out all over France, speaking in town-houses, market-places, highways and byways, agitating, urging to arm, all hearts tingling to hear. Great is the fire of anti-aristocrat eloquence. Nay, some, as bibliopolic Momoro, seem to hint afar off at something which smells of agrarian law, and a surgery of the over-swollen dropsical strong-box itself, whereat indeed the bold bookseller runs risk of being hanged, and ex-constituent Buzo has to smuggle him off. Governing persons, were they never so insignificant intrinsically, have for most part plenty of memoir writers, and the curious in after times can learn minutely their goings out and comings in, which, as men always love to know their fellow men in singular situations, is a comfort of its kind. Not so with these governing persons now in the town hall. And yet what most original fellow man of the governing sort, High Chancellor, King, Kaiser, Secretary of the Home or the Foreign Department, ever showed such a faces as Clark Tallien, Procureur Manuel, future Procureur Chaumet, here in this sand waltz of the 25 millions now do? O brother mortals, thou advocate Pani, friend of Danton, kinsman of Santerre, engraver Sargent, since called agate Sargent, thou Huguenin with the tocsin in thy heart. But, as Horace says, they wanted the sacred memoir writer, sacrovate, and we know them not. Men bragged of August and its doings, publishing them in high places, but of this September none now or afterwards would brag. The September world remains dark, fuliginous, as Lapland witch midnight, from which indeed very strange shapes will evolve themselves. Understand this, however, that incorruptible Robespierre is not wanting. Now, when the brunt of battle is past, in a stealthy way, the sea-green man sits there, his feline eyes excellent in the twilight. Also understand this other, a single fact worth many, that Marat is not only there, but has a seat of honour assigned him, a tribune particulière. How changed for Marat, lifted from his dark cellar into this luminous, peculiar tribune. All dogs have their day, even rabid dogs. Sorrowful, incurable Philoctetes Marat, without whom Troy cannot be taken. Hither, as a main element of the governing power, has Marat been raised. Royalist types, for we have suppressed innumerable Duressois, Royou, and even clapped them in prison. Royalist types replaced the worn types often snatched from a people's friend in old ill days. In our peculiar tribune we write and redact placards of due monetary terror, Amis du Peuple, now under the name of Journal de la République, and sit obeyed of men. Marat, says one, is the conscience of the Hôtel de Ville, keeper, as some call it, of the sovereign's conscience, which surely in such hands will not lie hid in a napkin. Two great movements, as we said, agitate this distracted national mind. A rushing against domestic traitors, a rushing against foreign despots. Mad movements both, restrainable by no known rule, strongest passions of human nature driving them on, love, hatred, vengeful sorrow, braggart nationality also vengeful, and pale panic over all. 1,200 slain patriots, do they not from their dark catacombs there in death's dumb show plead, O ye legislators, for vengeance? Such was the destructive rage of these aristocrats on the ever-memorable 10th. Nay, apart from vengeance, and with an eye to public salvation only, are there not still in this Paris, in round numbers, 30,000 aristocrats of the most malignant humour, driven now to their last trump-card? Be patient, ye patriots, our new High Court, Tribunal of the 17th, sits. Each section has sent 4 jurymen, and Danton, extinguishing improper judges, improper practices, wheresoever found, is the same man you have known at the Cordeliers. With such a minister of justice, shall not justice be done? Let it be swift, then, answers universal patriotism, swift and sure. One would hope this tribunal of the 17th is swifter than most. Already on the 21st, while our court is but 4 days old, Colonel d'Angremont, the royal enlister, crimp embaucheur, dies by torchlight. For lo, the great guillotine, wondrous to behold, now stands there. The doctor's idea has become oak and iron. The huge cyclopean axe falls in its groove like the ram of the pile engine, swiftly snuffing out the light of men. Mais vous, Gouache, what have you invented? This? Poor old Laporte, intendant of the civil list, follows next, quietly, the mild old man. Then Durosoy, royalist placarder, cashier of all the anti-revolutionists of the interior. He went rejoicing, said that a royalist like him ought to die of all days on this day, the 25th, or St. Louis' Day. All these have been tried, cast, the gallery shouting approval, and handed over to the realized idea within a week. Besides those we have acquitted, the galleries murmuring, and have dismissed, or even have personally guarded back to prison, as the galleries took to howling and even to menacing and elbowing. Languid this tribunal is not. Nor does the other movement slacken, the rushing against foreign despots. Strong forces shall meet in death grip, drilled Europe against mad, undrilled France, and singular conclusions will be tried. Conceive, therefore, in some faint degree, the tumult that whirls in this France, in this Paris. Placards from section, from commune, from legislative, from the individual patriot, flame monetary on all walls. Flags of danger to fatherland wave at the Hôtel de Ville, on the Pont Neuf, over the prostrate statue of kings. There is universal enlisting, urging to enlist. There is tearful boasting, leave-taking, irregular marching on the great north-eastern road. Marseillais sing their wild "To arms" in chorus, which now all men, all women and children have learned, and sing chorally in theatres, boulevards, streets, and the heart burns in every bosom. Aux armes, marchons! Or think how your aristocrats are skulking into covert, how Bertrand Molleville lies hidden in some garret in Aubry-le-Boucher Street with a poor surgeon who had known me. Dame de Staël has secreted her Narbonne, not knowing what in the world to make of him. The barriers are sometimes open, oftenest shut, no passports to be had. Town-hall emissaries with the eyes and claws of falcons, flitting watchful on all points of your horizon. In 2 words, Tribunal of the 17th, busy under howling galleries, Russian Brunswick over a space of 40 miles with his war tumbrils, and sleeping thunders and Briarian 66,000 right hands, coming. Oh heavens, in these later days of August he is come. Durosoy was not yet guillotined when news had come that the Prussians were harrying and ravaging about Metz. In some 4 days more one hears that Longwy, our first strong place on the borders, is fallen in 15 hours. Quick, therefore, O ye improvised municipals, quick and ever quicker, the improvised municipals make front to this also. Enrolment urges itself, and clothing and arming. Our very officers have now wool epaulets, for it is the reign of equality and also of necessity. Neither do men now monsieur and sir one another. Citoyen, citizen were suitabler. We even say thou, as the free peoples of antiquity did. So have journals and the improvised commune suggested, which shall be well. Infinitely better, meantime, could we suggest where arms are to be found. For the present our citoyens chant chorally, "To arms!" and have no arms. Arms are searched for, passionately. There is joy over any musket. Moreover, entrenchment shall be made round Paris. On the slopes of Montmartre men dig and shovel, even though the simple suspect this to be desperate. They dig, tricolour sashes speak encouragement, and well speed ye. Nay, finally, 12 members of the legislative go daily, not to encourage only, but to bear a hand and delve. It was decreed with acclamation. Arms shall either be provided, or else the ingenuity of man crack itself and become fatuity. Lean Beaumarchais, thinking to serve the fatherland and do a stroke of trade in the old way, has commissioned 60,000 stand of good arms out of Holland. Would to heaven, for fatherland's sake and his, they were come. Meanwhile railings are torn up, hammered into pikes. Chains themselves shall be welded together into pikes. The very coffins of the dead are raised for melting into balls. All church bells must down into the furnace to make cannon, all church plate into the mint to make money. Also behold the fair swan bevies of citoyennes that have alighted in churches, and sit there with swan neck, sewing tents and regimentals. Nor are patriotic gifts wanting from those that have aught left, nor stingily given. The fair Villon, mother and daughter, milliners in the Rue Saint-Martin, give a silver thimble and a coin of 15 sous, 7 halfpenny, with other similar effects, and offer, at least the mother does, to mount guard. Men who have not even a thimble give a thimble full, were it but of invention. One citoyenne has wrought out the scheme of a wooden cannon, which France shall exclusively profit by in the first instance. It is to be made of staves by the coopers, of almost boundless calibre, but uncertain as to strength. Thus they, hammering, scheming, stitching, founding, with all their heart and with all their soul. 2 bells only are to remain in each parish, for tocsin and other purposes. But mark also, precisely while the Prussian batteries were playing their brisket at Longwy in the north-east, and our dastardly Lavergne saw nothing for it but surrender, south-westward in remote patriarchal La Vendée, that sour ferment about non-juring priests, after long working, is ripe and explodes at the wrong moment for us. And so we have 8,000 peasants at Châtillon-sur-Sèvre who will not be balloted for soldiers, will not have their curates molested, to whom Bonchamp, La Roche-Jacqueline, and seigneurs enough of a royalist turn will join themselves, with Stoffles and charrettes, with heroes and shoe smugglers, and the loyal warmth of a simple people blown into flame and fury by theological and seigneurial bellows. So that there shall be fighting from behind ditches, death volleys bursting out of thickets and ravines of rivers, huts burning, feet of the pitiful women hurrying to refuge with their children on their back, seed fields fallow, whitened with human bones, 80,000 of all ages, ranks, sexes, flying at once across the Loire, with wail borne far on the winds. And in brief, for years coming, such a suite of scenes as glorious war has not offered in these late ages, not since our Albigenses and Crusadings were over, save indeed some chance Palatinate, or so we might have to burn by way of exception. The 8,000 at Châtillon will be got dispelled for the moment, the fire scattered, not extinguished. To the dints and bruises of outward battle there is to be added henceforth a deadlier internal gangrene. This rising in La Vendée reports itself at Paris on Wednesday the 29th of August, just as we had got our electors elected, and in spite of Brunswick and Longwy's teeth were hoping still to have a national convention if it pleased heaven. But indeed otherwise this Wednesday is to be regarded as one of the notablest Paris has yet seen. Gloomy tidings come successively, like Job's messengers, are met by gloomy answers. Of Sardinia rising to invade the south-east, and Spain threatening the south, we do not speak. But are not the Prussians master of Longwy, treacherously yielded, one would say, and preparing to besiege Verdun? Clerfayt and his Austrians are encompassing Thionville, darkening the north. Not Metzland now, but the Clermontais is getting harried. Flying Uhlans and hussars have been seen on the Chalons road, almost as far as Saint-Ménehould. Heart, ye patriots, if ye lose heart, ye lose all. It is not without a dramatic emotion that one reads in the parliamentary debates of this Wednesday evening, past 7 o'clock, the scene with the military fugitives from Longwy. Way-worn, dusty, disheartened, these poor men enter the legislative about sunset or after, give the most pathetic detail of the frightful pass they were in, Prussians billowing round by the myriad, volcanically spouting fire for 15 hours, we scattered sparse on the ramparts, hardly a cannoneer to 2 guns, our dastard Commandant Lavergne nowhere showing face, the priming would not catch, there was no powder in the bombs, what could we do? Mourir! Die! Answer prompt voices, and the dusty fugitives must shrink elsewhither for comfort. Yes, mourir, that is now the word. Be Longwy a proverb and a hissing among French strong places. Let it, say the legislative, be obliterated rather from the shamed face of the earth. And so there has gone forth decree that Longwy shall, were the Prussians once out of it, be razed and exist only as ploughed ground. Nor are the Jacobins milder, as how could they, the flower of patriotism? Poor Dame Lavergne, wife of the poor commandant, took her parasol one evening, and escorted by her father came over to the hall of the mighty mother, and reads a memoir tending to justify the commandant of Longwy. Lafarge, president, makes answer, "Citoyenne, the nation will judge Lavergne. The Jacobins are bound to tell him the truth. He would have ended his course there, terminé sa carrière, if he had loved the honour of his country." End of Book 1, Chapter 1. The French Revolution, A History by Thomas Carlyle. Volume 3, The Guillotine. Book 1, September. Chapter 2, Danton. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Peter Dann. Book 1, Chapter 2, Danton. But better than raising of Longwy, or rebuking poor dusty soldiers or soldiers' wives, Danton had come over last night and demanded a decree to search for arms, since they were not yielded voluntarily. Let domiciliary visits with rigour of authority be made to this end. To search for arms, for horses, aristocratism rolls in its carriages, while patriotism cannot trail its cannon. To search generally for munitions of war in the houses of persons suspect, and even, if it seem proper, to seize and imprison the suspect persons themselves. In the prisons their plots will be harmless. In the prisons they will be as hostages for us, and not without use. This decree the energetic Minister of Justice demanded last night and got. And this same night it is to be executed. It is being executed at the moment when these dusty soldiers get saluted with "Mourir." 2,000 stands of arms, as they count, are foraged in this way, and some 400 head of new prisoners. And on the whole, such a terror and damp is struck through the aristocrat heart as all but patriotism, and even patriotism were it out of this agony, might pity. Yes, monsieur. If Brunswick blast Paris to ashes, he probably will blast the prisons of Paris too. Pale terror, if we have got it, we will also give it, and the depths of horrors that lie in it. The same leaky bottom in these wild waters bears us all. One can judge what stir there was now among the 30,000 royalists, how the plotters, or the accused of plotting, shrank each other closer into his lurking place, like Bertrand Malville looking eager towards Longwy, hoping the weather would keep fair. Or how they dressed themselves in valet's clothes like Narbonne, and got to England as Dr. Bollman's famulus. How Dame de Staël bestirred herself, pleading with Manuel as a sister in literature, pleading even with Clark Tallien, a prey to nameless chagrins. Royalist Peltier, the pamphleteer, gives a touching narrative, not deficient in height of colouring, of the terrors of that night. From 5 in the afternoon a great city is struck suddenly silent, except for the beating of drums, for the tramp of marching feet, and ever and anon the dread thunder of the knocker at some door, a tricolor commissioner with his blue guards, blackguards, arriving. All streets are vacant, says Peltier, beset by guards at each end. All citizens are ordered to be within doors. On the river float sentinel barges, lest we escape by water, the barriers hermetically closed. Frightful. The sun shines serenely westering in smokeless mackerel sky. Paris is as if sleeping, as if dead. Paris is holding its breath to see what stroke will fall on it. Poor Peltier! Acts of apostles and all jocundity of leading articles are gone out, and it is become bitter earnest instead. Polished satire changed now into coarse pike points hammered out of railing, all logic reduced to this one primitive thesis: an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. Peltier, dolefully aware of it, ducks low, escapes unscathed to England, to urge there the inky war anew, to have trial by jury in due season, and deliverance by young Whig eloquence, world celebrated for a day. Of 30,000, naturally, great multitudes were left unmolested, but, as we said, some 400, designated as persons suspect, were seized, and an unspeakable terror fell on all. Woe to him who is guilty of plotting, of anti-civism, royalism, voyantism, who, guilty or not guilty, has an enemy in his section to call him guilty. Poor old Monsieur de Cazotte is seized, his young-loved daughter with him, refusing to quit him. Why, O Cazotte, wouldst thou quit romancing and diable amoureux for such reality as this? Poor old Monsieur de Sombreuil, he of the Invalides, is seized, a man seen askance by patriotism ever since the Bastille days, whom also a fond daughter will not quit. With young tears hardly suppressed, and old wavering weakness rousing itself once more. Oh, my brothers, oh, my sisters! The famed and named go, the nameless, if they have an accuser. Nicholas Lamotte's husband is in these prisons, she long since squelched on the London pavements, but gets delivered. Gros de Morand of the Courrier de l'Europe hobbles distractedly to and fro there, but they let him hobble out, on right nimble crutches, his hour not being yet come. Advocate Martin de la Varenne, very weak in health, is snatched off from mother and kin. Tricolor Rossignol, journeyman goldsmith and scoundrel, lately a risen man now, remembers an old pleading of Maton's. Juniac de Saint-Maillard goes, the brisk Frank soldier. He was in the mutiny of Nancy, in that effervescent regiment du Roi, on the wrong side. Saddest of all, Abbé Sicard goes, a priest who could not take the oath, but who could teach the deaf and dumb. In his section one man, he says, had a grudge at him. One man, at the fit hour, launches an arrest against him, which hits. In the Arsenal quarter there are dumb hearts making wail, with signs, with wild gestures. He, their miraculous healer and speech-bringer, is rapt away. What with the arrestments on this night of the 29th, what with those that have gone on more or less day and night ever since the 10th, one may fancy what the prisons now were. Crowding and confusion, jostle, hurry, vehemence and terror. Of the poor Queen's friends who had followed her to the Temple and been committed elsewhither to prison, some, as governess to Tourzel, are to be let go. One, the poor Princess de Lamballe, is not let go, but waits in the strong rooms of La Force there, what will betide further. Among so many hundreds whom the launched arrest hits, who are rolled off to town hall or section hall, to preliminary houses of detention, and hurled in thither as into cattle pens, we must mention one other, Caron de Beaumarchais, author of Figaro, vanquisher of Mapio parliaments and Gertzman hell-dogs, once numbered among the demigods, and now? We left him in his culminant state. What dreadful decline is this, when we again catch a glimpse of him? At midnight, it was but the 12th of August yet, the servant in his shirt, with wide staring eyes, enters your room. Monsieur, rise, all the people are come to seek you. They are knocking, like to break in the door. And they were in fact knocking in a terrible manner, d'une façon terrible. I fling on my coat, forgetting even the waistcoat, nothing on my feet but slippers, and say to him, and he, alas, answers mere negatory incoherences, panic interjections. And through the shutters and crevices, in front or rearward, the dull street lamps disclose only streetfuls of haggard countenances, clamorous, bristling with pikes. And you rush distracted for an outlet, finding none, and have to take refuge in the crockery press downstairs, and stand there palpitating in that imperfect costume, lights dancing past your keyhole, tramp of feet overhead, and the tumult of Satan, for 4 hours and more. and old ladies of the quarter started up, as we hear next morning, rang for their bonds and cordial drops with shrill interjections, and old gentlemen in their shirts leapt garden walls, flying, while none pursued, one of whom unfortunately broke his leg. Those 60,000 stand of Dutch arms which never arrive, and the bold stroke of trade, have turned out so ill. Beaumarchais escaped for this time, but not for the next time 10 days after. On the evening of the 29th he is still in that chaos of the prisons, in saddest wrestling condition, unable to get justice, even to get audience. Pani scratching his head when you speak to him and making off. Nevertheless, let the lover of Figaro know that Procureur Manuel, a brother in literature, found him and delivered him once more. But how the lean demigod, now shorn of his splendour, had to lurk in barns, to roam over harrowed fields panting for life, and to wait under eavesdrops and sit in darkness, on the boulevard amid paving stones and boulders, longing for one word of any minister or minister's clerk about those accursed Dutch muskets, and getting none, with heart fuming in spleen and terror and suppressed canine madness. Alas, how the swift, sharp hound, once fit to be Diana's, breaks his old teeth now, gnawing mere whinstones, and must fly to England, and returning from England must creep into the corner and lie quiet, toothless, moneyless. All this let the lover of Figaro fancy and weep for. We here, without weeping, not without sadness, wave the withered tough fellow mortal our farewell. His Figaro has returned to the French stage, nay, is at this day sometimes named the best piece there. And indeed, so long as man's life can ground itself only on artificiality and aridity, each new revolt and change of dynasty turning up only a new stratum of dry rubbish, and no soil yet coming to view, may it not be good to protest against such a life in many ways, and even in the Figaro way? End of Book 1, Chapter 2. The French Revolution, A History, by Thomas Carlyle. Volume 3, The Guillotine. Book 1, September. Chapter 3, Dumouriez. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Peter Dann. Book 1, Chapter 3, Dumouriez. Such are the last days of August 1792, days gloomy, disastrous, and of evil omen. What will become of this poor France? Dumouriez rode from the camp of Mold eastward to Sedan on Tuesday last, the 28th of the month, reviewed that so-called army left forlorn there by Lafayette. The forlorn soldiers gloomed on him, were heard growling on him, "This is one of them, Sir Blank La, that made war be declared." Unpromising army. Recruits flow in, filtering through depot after depot, but recruits merely, in want of all, happy if they have so much as arms. And Longwy has fallen basely, and Brunswick and the Prussian king with his 60,000 will beleaguer Verdun, and Clairfayt, an Austrian, press deeper in over the northern marches, 150,000 as fear counts. 80,000 as the returns show, to hem us in, Cimmerian Europe behind them. There is Castries and Broglie chivalry, royalist foot, in red facing and nankeen trousers, breathing death and the gallows. And lo, finally, at Verdun on Sunday, the 2nd of September 1792, Brunswick is here, with his king and 60,000 glittering over the heights. From beyond the winding Meuse river he looks down on us, on our high citadel and all our confectionery ovens, for we are celebrated for confectionery, has sent courteous summons in order to spare the effusion of blood. Resist him to the death? Every day of retardation precious? How, O General Beaurepaire, asks the amazed municipality, shall we resist him? We, the Verdun municipals, see no resistance possible. Has he not 60,000 and artillery without end? Retardation, patriotism, is good, but so likewise is peaceable baking of pastry and sleeping in whole skin. Hapless Beaurepaire stretches out his hands and pleads passionately in the name of country, honour, of heaven and of earth, to no purpose. The municipals have, by law, the power of ordering it, with an army officered by royalism or crypto-royalism. Such a law seemed needful, and they order it, as pacific pastry cooks, not as heroic patriots would, to surrender. Beaurepaire strides home with long steps. His valet, entering the room, sees him writing eagerly, and withdraws. His valet hears then, in a few minutes, the report of a pistol. Beaurepaire is lying dead. His eager writing had been a brief suicide farewell. In this manner died Beaurepaire, wept of France, buried in the Pantheon, with honourable pension to his widow, and for epitaph these words: "He chose death rather than yield to despots." The Prussians, descending from the heights, are peaceable masters of Verdun. And so Brunswick advances from stage to stage. Who shall now stay him? Covering 40 miles of country. Foragers fly far. The villages of the northeast are harried. Your Hessian forager has only 3 sous a day. The very emigrants, it is said, will take silver plate by way of revenge. Clermont, Saint-Menehould, Varennes, especially, ye towns of the Knight of Spurs, tremble ye. Procureur Sauce and the magistracy of Varennes have fled. Brave Boniface Leblanc of the Bras d'Or is to the woods. Mrs. Leblanc, a young woman fair to look upon, with her young infant, has to live in greenwood, like a beautiful Bessie Belle of song, her bower thatched with rushes, catching premature rheumatism. Clermont may ring the tocsin now and illuminate itself. Clermont lies at the foot of its cow, or Vache, so they name that mountain, a prey to the Hessian spoiler. Its fair women, fairer than most, are robbed, not of life, or what is dearer, yet of all that is cheaper and portable, for necessity on 3 halfpence a day has no law. At Saint-Menehould the enemy has been expected more than once, our nationals all turning out in arms, but was not yet seen. Postmaster Drouet, he is not in the woods, but minding his election, and will sit in the convention, notable king-taker and bold old dragoon as he is. Thus on the north-east all roams and runs, and on a set day, the date of which is irrecoverable by history, Brunswick has engaged to dine in Paris, the powers willing. And at Paris, in the centre, it is as we saw, and in La Vendée, south-west, it is as we saw, and Sardinia is in the south-east, and Spain is in the south, and Clairfait with Austria and Siege Thionville is in the north, and all France leaps distracted like the winnowed Sahara waltzing in sand colonnades. More desperate posture no country ever stood in. A country, we would say, which the majesty of Prussia, if it so pleased him, might partition and clip in pieces like a Poland, flinging the remainder to poor brother Louis, with directions to keep it quiet, or else we will keep it for him. Or perhaps the upper powers, minded that a new chapter in universal history shall begin here and not further on, may have ordered it all otherwise? In that case Brunswick will not dine in Paris on the set day, nor indeed one knows not when. Verily, amid this wreckage, where poor France seems grinding itself down to dust and bottomless ruin, who knows what miraculous salient point of deliverance and new life may have already come into existence there, and be already working there, though as yet human eye discern it not. On the night of that same 28th of August, the unpromising review day in Sedan, Dumouriez assembles a council of war at his lodgings there. He spreads out the map of this forlorn war district. Prussians here, Austrians there, triumphant both, with broad highway and little hindrance all the way to Paris. We, scattered helpless here and here. What to advise? The generals, strangers to Dumouriez, look blank enough, know not well what to advise. if it be not retreating, and retreating till our recruits accumulate, till perhaps the chapter of chance turn up some leaf for us, or Paris at all events be sacked at the latest day possible. The many-counselled, who has not closed an eye for 3 nights, listens with little speech to these long cheerless speeches, merely watching the speaker that he may know him, then wishes them all good night, but beckons a certain young Touvenot, the fire of whose looks had pleased him, to wait a moment. Touvenot waits. "Voilà," says Polymatus, pointing to the map. "That is the forest of Argonne, that long strip of rocky mountain and wild wood, 40 miles long, with but 5, or say even 3, practicable passes through it. This, for they have forgotten it, might one not still seize, though Clairfait sits so nigh? Once seized, the Champagne called the Hungry, or worse, Champagne Poileuse, on their side of it, the fat 3 bishoprics and willing France on ours, and the equinox reigns not far, this Argonne might be the Thermopylae of France. O brisk Dumouriez Polymatus, with thy teeming head, may the gods grant it! Polymatus, at any rate, folds his map together and flings himself on bed, resolved to try on the morrow morning. With astucity, with swiftness, with audacity, one had need to be a lion-fox and have luck on one's side. End of Book 1, Chapter 3. The French Revolution, A History, by Thomas Carlyle, Volume 3, The Guillotine, Book 1, September, Chapter 4, September in Paris. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Peter Dann. Book 1, Chapter 4, September in Paris. At Paris, by lying rumour, which proved prophetic and veridical, the fall of Verdun was known some hours before it happened. It is Sunday, the 2nd of September. Handiwork hinders not the speculations of the mind. Verdun gone, though some still deny it. The Prussians in full march, with gallows ropes, with fire and faggot. 30,000 aristocrats within our own walls, and but the merest quarter tithe of them yet put in prison. Nay, there goes a word that even these will revolt. Sieur Jean-Julien Wagoner of Vaugirard, being set in the pillory last Friday, took all at once to crying that he would be well revenged ere long, that the king's friends in prison would burst out, force the temple, set the king on horseback, and, joined by the unimprisoned, ride roughshod over us all. This the unfortunate Wagoner of Vaugirard did bawl at the top of his lungs. When snatched off to the town hall, he persisted in it, still bawling. Yesternight, when they guillotined him, he died with the froth of it on his lips. For a man's mind padlocked to the pillory may go mad, and all men's minds may go mad, and believe him, as the frenetic will do, because it is impossible. So that apparently the knot of the crisis and last agony of France is come. Make front to this, thou improvised commune, strong Danton, whatsoever man is strong. Readers can judge whether the flag of country in danger flapped soothing or distractively on the souls of men that day. But the improvised commune, but strong Danton, is not wanting, each after his kind. Huge placards are getting plastered to the walls. At 2 o'clock the storm bell shall be sounded, the alarm cannon fired. All Paris shall rush to the Champ de Mars and have itself enrolled. Unarmed, truly, and undrilled, but desperate in the strength of frenzy. Haste, ye men, ye very women, offer to mount guard and shoulder the brown musket. Weak clucking hens in a state of desperation will fly at the muzzle of the mastiff, and even conquer him by vehemence of character. Terror itself, when once grown transcendental, becomes a kind of courage, as frost sufficiently intense, according to poet Milton, will burn. Danton the other night, in the Legislative Committee of General Defence, when the other ministers and legislators had all opined, said it would not do to quit Paris and fly to Saumur, that they must abide by Paris, and take such attitude as would put their enemies in fear, faire peur, a word of his which has been often repeated and reprinted in italics. At 2 of the clock, Beaurepaire, as we saw, has shot himself at Verdun, and over Europe mortals are going in for afternoon sermon. But at Paris all steeples are clangoring, not for sermon, the alarm gun booming from minute to minute, Champ de Mars and Fatherland's altar boiling with desperate terror courage. What a miserere going up to heaven from this once capital of the most Christian king! The legislative sits in alternate awe and effervescence, Vergniaud proposing that 12 shall go and dig personally on Montmartre, which is decreed by acclaim. But better than digging personally with acclaim, see Danton enter, the black brows clouded, the colossus figure tramping heavy, grim energy looking from all features of the rugged man. Strong is that grim son of France and son of earth, a reality and not a formula, he too, and surely now if ever, being hurled low enough, it is on the earth and on realities that he rests. Legislators, so speaks the stentor voice, as the newspapers yet preserve it for us. It is not the alarm cannon that you hear, it is the pas de charge against our enemies. To conquer them, to hurl them back, what do we require? Il nous faut de l'audace, et encore de l'audace, et toujours de l'audace. To dare and again to dare, and without end to dare. Right so, thou brawny Titan, there is nothing left for thee but that. Old men who heard it will still tell you how the reverberating voice made all hearts swell in that moment, and braced them to the sticking place, and thrilled abroad over France like electric virtue as a word spoken in season. But the Commune enrolling in the Champ de Mars? But the Commune of Watchfulness, become now Committee of Public Salvation, whose conscience is Marat? The Commune enrolls many, provides tents for them in that Mars field, that they may march with dawn on the morrow. Praise to this part of the Commune. To Marat and the Committee of Watchfulness, not praise, not even blame, such as could be meted out in these insufficient dialects of ours, expressive silence rather. Lone Marat, the man forbid, meditating long in his cellars of refuge on his stylites pillar, could see salvation in one thing only, in the fall of 260,000 aristocrat heads. With so many score of Naples bravos, each a dirk in his right hand, a muff on his left, he would traverse France and do it. But the world laughed, mocking the severe benevolence of a people's friend, and his idea could not become an action, but only a fixed idea. Lo, now, however, he has come down from his stylites pillar to a tribune particulière, here now, without the dirks, without the muffs at least, were it not grown possible, now in the knot of the crisis, when salvation or destruction hangs in the hour? The ice tower of Avignon was noised of sufficiently, and lives in all memories, but the authors were not punished. Nay, we saw Jourdain Coupe-tête borne on men's shoulders like a copper portent, traversing the cities of the south. What phantasms, squalid, horrid, shaking their dirk and muff, may dance through the brain of a Marat in this dizzy pealing of tocsin, miserere, and universal frenzy, seek not to guess, O reader. Nor what the cruel Biot in his short brown coat was thinking, nor Sergent, nor yet Agathe Sergent, nor Pani, the confidant of Danton, nor, in a word, how gloomy Orcus does breed in her gloomy womb, and fashion her monsters and prodigies of events which thou seest her visibly bear. Terror is on these streets of Paris. Terror and rage, tears and frenzy, tocsin miserere pealing through the air, fierce desperation rushing to battle, mothers with streaming eyes and wild hearts sending forth their sons to die. Carriage horses are seized by the bridle that they may draw cannon, the trace is cut, the carriage is left standing. In such tocsin miserere, the murky bewilderment of frenzy, are not murder, ate, and all furies near at hand? On slight hint, who knows on how slight, may not murder come, and with her snaky sparkling hand illuminate this murk? How it was and went, what part might be premeditated, what was improvised and accidental, man will never know till the great day of judgment make it known. But with a Marat for keeper of the sovereign's conscience, and we know what the ultima ratio of sovereigns when they are driven to it is, in this Paris there are as many wicked men, say 100 or more, as exist in all the earth, to be hired and set on, to set on of their own accord, unhired. And yet we will remark that premeditation itself is not performance, is not surety of performance, that it is perhaps at most surety of letting whatsoever wills perform. From the purpose of crime to the act of crime there is an abyss, wonderful to think of. The finger lies on the pistol, but the man is not yet a murderer. Nay, his whole nature staggering at such consummation. Is there not a confused pause, rather, one last instant of possibility for him? Not yet a murderer, it is at the mercy of light trifles whether the most fixed idea may not yet become unfixed. One slight twitch of a muscle, the death flash bursts, and he is it, and will for eternity be it. And earth has become a penal Tartarus for him, his horizon girdled now, not with golden hope, but with red flames of remorse. Voices from the depths of nature sounding woe, woe on him. Of such stuff are we all made, on such powder mines of bottomless guilt and criminality, if God restrained not, as is well said, does the purest of us walk. There are depths in man that go the length of lowest hell, as there are heights that reach highest heaven. For are not both heaven and hell made out of him, made by him, everlasting miracle and mystery as he is? But looking on the Champ de Mars, with its tent buildings and frantic enrolments, on this murky, simmering Paris with its crammed prisons, supposed about to burst, with its tocsin miserere, its mothers' tears and soldiers' farewell shoutings, the pious soul might have prayed that day that God's grace would restrain, and greatly restrain, lest on slight hest or hint madness, horror, and murder rose, and this Sabbath day of September became a day black in the annals of men. The tocsin is pealing its loudest. The clocks inaudibly strike 3, when poor Abbé Sicard, with some 30 other non-jurant priests in 6 carriages, fare along the street from their preliminary house of detention at the town hall, westward towards the prison of the Abbé. Carriages enough stand deserted on the streets. These 6 move on, through angry multitudes, cursing as they move. Accursed aristocrat Tartuffes, this is the pass ye have brought us to. And now ye will break the prisons and set Capet Vito on horseback to ride over us? Out upon you, priests of Beelzebub and Moloch, of Tartuffery, Mammon, and the Prussian gallows, which ye name Mother Church and God. Such reproaches have the poor non-jurants to endure, and worse, spoken in on them by frantic patriots who mount even on the carriage steps, the very guards hardly refraining. "Pull up your carriage blinds." "No," answers patriotism, clapping its horny paw on the carriage blind and crushing it down again. Patience in oppression has limits. We are close on the Abbé. It has lasted long. A poor non-jurant of quick temper smites the horny paw with his cane, nay, finding solacement in it, smites the unkempt head sharply and again more sharply, twice over, seen clearly of us and of the world. It is the last that we see clearly. Alas, next moment the carriages are locked and blocked in endless raging tumults, in yells deaf to the cry of mercy, which answer the cry for mercy with sabre thrusts through the heart. The 30 priests are torn out, are massacred about the prison gate, one after one. Only the poor Abbé Sicard, whom one Moton, a watchmaker, knowing him, heroically tried to save and secrete in the prison, escapes to tell. And it is night, and Orcus and Murder's snaky sparkling head has risen in the murk. From Sunday afternoon, exclusive of intervals and pauses not final, till Thursday evening, there follows consecutively 100 hours, which 100 hours are to be reckoned with the hours of the Bartholomew butchery, of the Armagnac massacres, Sicilian vespers, or whatsoever is savagest in the annals of this world. Horrible the hour when man's soul in its paroxysm spurns asunder the barriers and rules, and shows what dens and depths are in it. For night and Orcus, as we say, as was long prophesied, have burst forth here in this Paris, from this subterranean imprisonment, hideous, dim, confused, which it is painful to look on, and yet which cannot, and indeed which should not, be forgotten. The reader who looks earnestly through this dim phantasmagory of the pit will discern few fixed certain objects, and yet still a few. He will observe in this abbey prison, the sudden massacre of the priests being once over, a strange court of justice, or call it court of revenge and wild justice, swiftly fashion itself, and take seat round a table, with the prison registers spread before it. Stanislas Maillard, Bastille hero, famed leader of the Maenads, presiding. Oh, Stanislas, one hoped to meet thee elsewhere than here, thou shifty riding usher with an inkling of law. This work also thou hadst to do, and then to depart forever from our eyes. At La Force, at the Châtelet, the Conciergerie, the like court forms itself with the like accompaniments. The thing that one man does, other men can do. There are some 7 prisons in Paris, full of aristocrats with conspiracies. Nay, not even Bicêtre and Salpêtre shall escape, with their forges of assignats, and there are 70 times 700 patriot hearts in a state of frenzy. Scoundrel hearts also there are, as perfect, say, as the earth holds, if such are needed. To whom in this mood law is as no law, and killing, by what name soever called, is but work to be done. So sit these sudden courts of wild justice, with the prison registers before them, unwonted wild tumult howling all round, the prisoners in dread expectancy within. Swift, a name is called, bolts jingle, a prisoner is there. A few questions are put. Swiftly this sudden jury decides, royalist plotter or not. Clearly not in that case. Let the prisoner be enlarged with Vive la Nation. Probably yea, then still let the prisoner be enlarged, but without Vive la Nation, or else it may run. Let the prisoner be conducted to La Force. At La Force again their formula is, let the prisoner be conducted to the Abbaye. To La Force then. Volunteer bailiff sees the doomed man, he is at the outer gate, enlarged or conducted, not into La Force, but into a howling sea, forth under an arch of wild sabres, axes and pikes, and sinks, hewn asunder. And another sinks, and another, and there forms itself a piled heap of corpses, and the kennels begin to run red. Fancy the yells of these men, their faces of sweat and blood, the crueller shrieks of these women, for there are women too, and a fellow mortal hurled naked into it all. Journiac de Saint-Maillard has seen battle, has seen an effervescent regiment Devours in mutiny, but the bravest heart may quail at this. The Swiss prisoners, remnants of the 10th of August, clasped each other spasmodically and hung back, grey veterans crying, "Mercy, monsieur, à mercy!" But there was no mercy. Suddenly, however, one of these men steps forward. He had a blue frock-coat. He seemed to be about 30. His stature was above common, his look noble and martial. "I go first," said he, "since it must be so. Adieu." Then dashing his hat sharply behind him, "Which way?" cried he to the brigands. "Show it me, then." They open the folding gate. He is announced to the multitude. He stands a moment motionless, then plunges forth among the pikes, and dies of 1,000 wounds. Man after man is cut down. The sabres need sharpening. The killers refresh themselves from wine jugs. Onward and onward goes the butchery, the loud yells wearing down into bass growls. A sombre-faced shifting multitude looks on in dull approval or dull disapproval, in dull recognition that it is necessity. An Anglais in drab greatcoat was seen, or seemed to be seen, serving liquor from his own dram-bottle. For what purpose, if not set on by Pitt, Satan and himself know best. Witty Dr. Moore grew sick on approaching, and turned into another street. Quick enough goes this jury court, and rigorous. The brave are not spared, nor the beautiful, nor the weak. Old Monsieur de Montmorin, the minister's brother, was acquitted by the tribunal of the 17th and conducted back, elbowed by howling galleries, but is not acquitted here. Princess de Lamballe is laid down on bed. "Madame, you are to be removed to the Abbaye." "I do not wish to remove. I am well enough here." "There is a need be for removing." "She will arrange her dress a little." Then rude voice answer, "You have not far to go." She too is led to the hell gate, a manifest queen's friend. She shivers back at the sight of bloody sabres, but there is no return. Onwards. That fair hind head is cleft with the axe, the neck is severed. That fair body is cut in fragments, with indignities and obscene horrors of mustachio, grand lèvres, which human nature would fain find incredible, which shall be read in the original language only. She was beautiful, she was good, she had known no happiness. Young hearts, generation after generation, will think with themselves, "O worthy of worship, thou king-descended, God-descended, and poor sister-woman! Why was I not there, and some sword Balmung or Thor's hammer in my hand? Her head is fixed on a pike, paraded under the window of the temple, that a still more hated, a Marie Antoinette, may see." One municipal in the temple with the royal prisoners at the moment said, "Look out." Another eagerly whispered, "Do not look." The circuit of the temple is guarded in these hours by a long-stretched tricolor riband. Terror enters, and the clangour of infinite tumult, hitherto not regicide, though that too may come. But it is more edifying to note what thrillings of affection, what fragments of wild virtues turn up in this shaking asunder of man's existence, for of these two there is a proportion. Note old Marquis Cazot. He is doomed to die, but his young daughter clasps him in her arms with an inspiration of eloquence, with a love which is stronger than very death. The heart of the killers themselves is touched by it. The old man is spared. Yet he was guilty, if plotting for his king is guilt. In 10 days more a court of law condemned him, and he had to die elsewhere, bequeathing his daughter a lock of his old grey hair. Or note old Monsieur de Sombreuil, who also had a daughter. "My father is not an aristocrat. O good gentlemen, I will swear it, and testify it, and in all ways prove it. We are not, we hate aristocrats." "Wilt thou drink aristocrats' blood?" The man lifts blood, if universal rumour can be credited. The poor maiden does drink. "This Sombreuil is innocent, then?" Yes, indeed, and now note most of all how the bloody pikes at this news do rattle to the ground, and the tiger yells become bursts of jubilee over a brother saved, and the old man and his daughter are clasped to bloody bosoms with hot tears and borne home in triumph of Vive la Nation, the killers refusing even money. Does it seem strange, this temper of theirs? It seems very certain, well proved by royalist testimony in other instances, and very significant. End of Book 1, Chapter 4. The French Revolution, A History, by Thomas Carlyle, Volume 3, The Guillotine, Book 1, September. Chapter 5, A Trilogy. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain, read by Peter Dann. Book 1, Chapter 5, A Trilogy. As all delineation in these ages, were it never so epic, speaking itself and not singing itself, must either found on belief and provable fact, or have no foundation at all, nor except as floating cobweb any existence at all, the reader will perhaps prefer to take a glance with the very eyes of eyewitnesses, and see in that way for himself how it was. Brave Journiac, innocent Abbé Sicard, judicious advocate Maiton, these, greatly compressing themselves, shall speak each an instant. Journiac's agony of 38 hours went through above 100 editions, though intrinsically a poor work. Some portion of it may here go through above the 101st, for want of a better. Towards 7 o'clock, Sunday night, at the Abbaye, for Journiac goes by dates, we saw two men enter, their hands bloody and armed with sabres. A turnkey with a torch lighted them. He pointed to the bed of the unfortunate Swiss, reading. Reading spoke with a dying voice. One of them paused, but the other cried, "Allons donc!" lifted the unfortunate man, carried him out on his back to the street. He was massacred there. We all looked at one another in silence. We clasped each other's hands. Motionless, with fixed eyes, we gazed on the pavement of our prison, on which lay the moonlight, checkered with the triple stanchions of our windows. 3 in the morning. They were breaking in one of the prison doors. We at first thought they were coming to kill us in our room, but heard by voices on the staircase that it was a room where some prisoners had barricaded themselves. They were all butchered there, as we shortly gathered. 10 o'clock. The Abbé L'Enfant and the Abbé de Chappe de Rassignac appeared in the pulpit of the chapel, which was our prison. They had entered by a door from the stairs. They said to us that our end was at hand, that we must compose ourselves and receive their last blessing. An electric movement, not to be defined, threw us all on our knees, and we received it. These two white-haired old men blessing us from their place above, death hovering over our heads, on all hands environing us, the moment is never to be forgotten. Half an hour after, they were both massacred, and we heard their cries. Thus Journiac in his agony in the Abbaye. Now let the good Maiton speak, what he, over in La Force in the same hours, is suffering and witnessing. This resurrection by him is greatly the best, the least theatrical of these pamphlets, and stands testing by documents. Towards 7 o'clock on Sunday night, prisoners were called frequently, and they did not reappear. Each of us reasoned in his own way on this singularity, but our ideas became calm as we persuaded ourselves that the memorial I had drawn up for the National Assembly was producing effect. At 1 in the morning the grate which led to our quarter opened anew. 4 men in uniform, each with a drawn sabre and blazing torch, came up to our corridor, preceded by a turnkey, and entered an apartment close to ours to investigate a box there, which we heard them break up. This done, they stepped into the gallery and questioned the man Cuissa to know where Lamotte, Nicholas's widower, was. Lamotte, they said, had some months ago, under pretext of a treasure he knew of, swindled a sum of 300 livres from one of them, inviting him to dinner for that purpose. The wretched Cuissa, now in their hands, who indeed lost his life this night, answered, trembling, that he remembered the fact well, but could not tell what was become of Lamotte. Determined to find Lamotte and confront him with Cuissa, they rummaged, along with this latter, through various other apartments, but without effect, for we heard them say, "Come search among the corpses, then, for nom de Dieu, we must find where he is." At this time I heard Louis Badi, the Abbé Badi's name, called. He was brought out and directly massacred, as I learned. He had been accused, along with his concubine, 5 or 6 years before, of having murdered and cut in pieces his own brother. Auditor of the Chambre des Comptes of Montpellier, but had by his subtlety, his dexterity, nay, his eloquence, outwitted the judges, and escaped. One may fancy what terror these words, "Come search among the corpses," then, had thrown me into. I saw nothing for it now but resigning myself to die. I wrote my last will, concluding it by a petition and adjuration that the paper should be sent to its address. Scarcely had I quitted the pen when there came 2 other men in uniform. One of them, whose arm and sleeve up to the very shoulder as well as the sabre were covered with blood, said he was as weary as a hodman that had been beating plaster. Baudin de la Chesnaye was called. 60 years of virtues could not save him. They said, "À l'abbaye." He passed the fatal outer gate, gave a cry of terror at sight of the heaped corpses, covered his eyes with his hands, and died of innumerable wounds. At every new opening of the grate I thought I should hear my own name called and see Rossignol enter. I flung off my nightgown and cap. I put on a coarse unwashed shirt, a worn frock without waistcoat, an old round hat. These things I had sent for some days ago, in the fear of what might happen. The rooms of this corridor had been all emptied but ours. We were 4 together, whom they seemed to have forgotten. We addressed our prayers in common to the Eternal, to be delivered from this peril. Baptiste, the turnkey, came up by himself to see us. I took him by the hands. I conjured him to save us, promised him 100 louis if he would conduct me home. A noise coming from the grates made him hastily withdraw. It was the noise of some 12 or 15 men armed to the teeth. As we, lying flat to escape being seen, could see from our windows. "Upstairs," said they, "let not one remain." I took out my penknife. I considered where I should strike myself, but reflected that the blade was too short, and also on religion. Finally, however, between 7 and 8 o'clock in the morning, enter 4 men with bludgeons and sabres, to one of whom Gerard, my comrade, whispered earnestly apart. During their colloquy I searched everywhere for shoes that I might lay off the advocate Pump's pantoufles de palais I had on, but could find none. Constant, called Le Sauvage, Gerard, and a third whose name escapes me, they let clear off. As for me, 4 sabres were crossed over my breast, and they led me down. I was brought to their bar, to the personage with the scarf, who sat as judge there. He was a lame man of tall, lank stature. He recognized me on the streets, and spoke to me 7 months after. I have been assured that he was son of a retired attorney, and named Chépy. Crossing the court called des Nourrices, I saw Manuel haranguing in tricolor scarf. The trial, as we see, ends in acquittal and resurrection. Poor Sicard, from the violon of the Abbé, shall say but a few words, true-looking, though tremulous. Towards 3 in the morning the killers bethink them of this little violon, and knock from the court. I tapped gently, trembling lest the murderers might hear, on the opposite door, where the section committee was sitting. They answered gruffly that they had no key. There were 3 of us in this violon. My companions thought they perceived a kind of loft overhead, but it was very high. Only one of us could reach it, by mounting on the shoulders of both the others. One of them said to me that my life was usefuller than theirs. I resisted. They insisted. No denial. I fling myself on the neck of these 2 deliverers. Never was seen more touching. I mount on the shoulders of the first, then on those of the second, finally on the loft, and address to my 2 comrades the expression of a soul overwhelmed with natural emotions. The 2 generous companions, we rejoice to find, did not perish. But it is time that Journiac de Saint-Méard should speak his last words and end this singular trilogy. The night had become day, and the day has again become night. Journiac, worn down with uttermost agitation, has fallen asleep, and had a cheering dream. He has also contrived to make acquaintance with one of the volunteer bailiffs, and spoken in native Provençal with him. On Tuesday, about 1 in the morning, his agony is reaching its crisis. By the glare of 2 torches I now descried the terrible tribunal where lay my life or my death. The president, in grey coats, with a sabre at his side, stood leaning with his hands against a table on which were papers, an inkstand, tobacco pipes, and bottles. Some 10 persons were around, seated or standing, 2 of whom had jackets and aprons. Others were sleeping, stretched out on benches. 2 men in bloody shirts guarded the door of the place. An old turnkey had his hand on the lock. In front of the president 3 men held a prisoner who might be about 60 or 70. He was old Marshal Maillet of the Tuileries on August the 10th. They stationed me in a corner. My guards crossed their sabres on my breast. I looked on all sides for my Provençal. 2 National Guards, one of them drunk, presented some appeal from the section of Croix Rouge in favour of the prisoner. The man in grey answered, "They are useless, these appeals for traitors." Then the prisoner exclaimed, "It is frightful, your judgment is a murder." The president answered, "My hands are washed of it, take Monsieur Maillet away." They drove him into the street, where through the opening of the door I saw him massacred. The president sat down to write, registering, I suppose, the name of this one whom they had finished. Then I heard him say, "Another, un autre." Behold me then haled before this swift and bloody judgment bar, where the best protection was to have no protection, and all resources of ingenuity became null if they were not founded on truth. 2 of my guards held me each by a hand, the 3rd by the collar of my coat. "Your name, your profession?" said the president. "The smallest lie ruins you," added one of the judges. "My name is Journiac, Saint-Maillard. I have served as an officer 20 years, and I appear at your tribunal with the assurance of an innocent man who therefore will not lie." "We shall see that," said the president. "Do you know why you are arrested?" "Yes, Monsieur le President, I am accused of editing the Journal de la Cour de la Ville, but I hope to prove the falsity." But no, Journiac's proof of the falsity, and defence generally, though of excellent result as a defence, is not interesting to read. It is long-winded. There is a loose theatricality in the reporting of it which does not amount to unveracity, yet which tends that way. We shall suppose him successful, beyond hope, in proving and disproving, and skip largely to the catastrophe, almost at 2 steps. "But after all," said one of the judges, "there is no smoke without kindling. Tell us why they accuse you of that." I was about to do so. Journiac does so, with more and more success. "Nay," continued I, "they accuse me even of recruiting for the emigrants." At these words there arose a general murmur. "Oh, monsieur, monsieur!" I exclaimed, raising my voice. "It is my turn to speak. I beg Monsieur le President to have the kindness to maintain it for me. I never needed it more." True enough, said almost all the judges with a laugh. "Silence!" While they were examining the testimonials I had produced, a new prisoner was brought in and placed before the president. It was one priest more, they said, whom they had ferreted out of the chapelle. After very few questions, "À la force!" he flung his breviary on the table, was hurled forth, and massacred. I reappeared before the tribunal. "You tell us always," cried one of the judges with a tone of impatience, "that you are not this, that you are not that. What are you, then?" "I was an open royalist." There arose a general murmur, which was miraculously appeased by another of the men, who had seemed to take an interest in me. "We are not here to judge opinions," said he, "but to judge the results of them." Could Rousseau and Voltaire, both in one pleading for me, have said better? "Yes, monsieur," cried I. "Always till the 10th of August I was an open royalist. Ever since the 10th of August that cause has been finished. I am a Frenchman, true to my country. I was always a man of honour. My soldiers never distrusted me. Nay, 2 days before that business of Nancy, when their suspicion of their officers was at its height, they chose me for commander to lead them to Lunéville, to get back the prisoners of the regiment Maistre de Camp, and seize General Mansaigne. Which fact there is, most luckily, an individual present who by a certain token can confirm. The president, this cross-questioning being over, took off his hat and said, "I see nothing to suspect in this man. I am for granting him his liberty. Is that your vote?" To which all the judges answered, "Oui, oui, it is just." And there arose vivats within doors and without, escort of 3 amid shoutings and embracings. Thus Juniac escaped from jury trial and the jaws of death. Mayton and Sicard did, either by trial and no bill found, lank President Shapey finding absolutely nothing, or else by evasion and new favour of Moton, the brave watchmaker, likewise escape, and were embraced and wept over, weeping in return, as they well might. Thus they three, in wondrous trilogy or triple soliloquy, uttering simultaneously through the dread night watches their night thoughts, grown audible to us. They three are become audible, but the other 1,089, of whom 202 were priests, who also had night thoughts, remain inaudible, choked forever in black death, heard only of President Shapey and the man in grey. End of Book 1, Chapter 5. The French Revolution, A History, by Thomas Carlyle, Volume 3, The Guillotine. Book 1, September. Chapter 6, The Circular. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Peter Dann. Book 1, Chapter 6, The Circular. But the constituted authorities all this while? The Legislative Assembly, the 6 ministers, the Town Hall, Santerre with the National Guard? It is very curious to think what a city is. Theatres, to the number of some 23, were open every night during these prodigies, while right arms here grew weary with slaying, right arms there a tweedle-deeing on melodious catgut. At the very instant when Abbé Sicard was climbing up his second pair of shoulders, 3 men high, 500,000 human individuals were lying horizontal as if nothing were amiss. As for the poor legislative, the sceptre had departed from it. The legislative did send deputation to the prisons, to the street courts, and poor Monsieur Dussault did harangue there, but produced no conviction whatsoever. Nay, at last, as he continued haranguing, the street court interposed, not without threats, and he had to cease and withdraw. This is the same poor worthy old Monsieur Dussault who told, or indeed almost sang, though with cracked voice, the taking of the Bastille, to our satisfaction long since. He was wont to announce himself on such, and on all occasions, as the translator of Juvenal. "Good citizens, you see before you a man who loves his country, who is the translator of Juvenal," said he once. "Juvenal?" interrupts Sans-Culottism. "Who the devil is Juvenal? One of your sacre aristocrats? To the lantern!" From an orator of this kind, conviction was not to be expected. The legislative had much ado to save one of its own members, or ex-members, Deputy Journeau, who chanced to be lying in arrest for mere parliamentary delinquencies in these prisons. As for poor old Dussault and company, they returned to the salle de manège, saying it was dark and they could not see well what was going on. Roland writes indignant messages in the name of order, humanity, and the law, but there is no force at his disposal. Santerre's national force seems lazy to rise, though he made requisitions, he says, which always dispersed again. Nay, did not we with Advocate Mayton's eyes see men in uniform too, with their sleeves bloody to the shoulder? Pétion goes in tricolour scarf, speaks the austere language of the law. The killers give up while he is there. When his back is turned, recommence. Manuel too, in scarf, we, with Mayton's eyes, transiently saw haranguing in the court called of nurses, Coeur de Nourrice. On the other hand, cruel Billaud, likewise in scarf, with that small puce coat and black wig we are used to on him, audibly delivers, standing among corpses at the Abbaye, a short but ever memorable harangue, reported in various phraseology, but always to this purpose: "Brave citizens, you are extirpating the enemies of liberty. You are at your duty. A grateful commune and country would wish to recompense you adequately, but cannot, for you know its want of funds. Whoever shall have worked, travaillé, in a prison shall receive a draft of 1 louis, payable by our cashier. Continue your work." The constituted authorities are of yesterday, all pulling different ways. There is properly not constituted authority, but every man is his own king, and all are kinglets, belligerent, allied, or armed neutral, without king over them. "Oh, everlasting infamy!" exclaims Montgaillard, "that Paris stood looking on in stupor for 4 days and did not interfere." Very desirable indeed that Paris had interfered, yet not unnatural that it stood even so, looking on in stupor. Paris is in death panic, the enemy and gibbets at its door. Whosoever in Paris has the heart to front death finds it more pressing to do it fighting the Prussians than fighting the killers of aristocrats. Indignant abhorrence, as in Roland, may be here. Gloomy sanction, premeditation or not, as in Marat and Committee of Salvation, may be there. Dull disapproval, dull approval, and acquiescence in necessity and destiny is the general temper. The sons of darkness, 200 or so, risen from their lurking places, have scope to do their work. Urged on by fever frenzy of patriotism and the madness of terror, urged on by lucre and the gold louis of wages? Nay, not lucre, for the gold watches, rings, money of the massacred are punctually brought to the town hall by kingers sans indispensables, who higgle afterwards for their 20 shillings of wages, and Sergeant, sticking an uncommonly fine agate on his finger, fully meaning to account for it, becomes agate Sergeant. But the temper, as we say, is dull acquiescence. Not till the patriotic or frenetic part of the work is finished for want of material, and sons of darkness, bent clearly on lucre alone, begin wrenching watches and purses, brooches from ladies' necks, to equip volunteers in daylight on the streets, does the temper from dull grow vehement, does the constable raise his truncheon and, striking heartily, like a cattle driver in earnest, beat the course of things back into its old regulated drove roads. The Garde Meuble itself was surreptitiously plundered on the 17th of the month, to Roland's new horror, who anew bestirs himself, and is, as Sieyès says, the veto of scoundrels, Roland veto des coquins. This is the September Massacre, otherwise called severe justice of the people. These are the Septemberers, Septembrisers, a name of some note and lucency, but lucency of the nether fire sort, very different from that of our Bastille heroes, who shone, disputable by no friend of freedom, as in heavenly light radiance. To such faces of the business have we advanced since then. The numbers massacred are, in historical fantasy, between 2,000 and 3,000, or indeed they are upwards of 6,000, for Peltier in vision saw them massacring the very patients of the Bicêtre madhouse with grape shot. Nay, finally, they are 12,000 and odd hundreds, not more than that. In arithmetical ciphers and lists drawn up by accurate advocate Maiton, the number, including 202 priests, 3 persons unknown, and 1 thief killed at the Bernardin, is, as above hinted, 1,089, no less than that. 1,089 lie dead, 260 heaped carcasses on the Pont au Change itself, among which Robespierre, pleading afterwards, will nearly weep to reflect that there was said to be 1 slain innocent. 1, not 2, O thou sea-green incorruptible? If so, Themis Sansculotte must be lucky, for she was brief. In the dim registers of the town hall, which are preserved to this day, men read with a certain sickness of heart items and entries not usual in town books. To workers employed in preserving the salubrity of the air in the prisons, and persons who presided over these dangerous operations, so much. In various items nearly £700 sterling. To carters employed to the burying grounds of Clamart, Montrouge, and Vaugirard, at so much a journey per cart, this also is an entry. Then so many francs and odd sous for the necessary quantity of quicklime. Carts go along the streets, full of stripped human corpses, thrown pell-mell, limbs sticking up, Seest thou that cold hand sticking up through the heaped embrace of brother corpses, in its yellow paleness, in its cold rigour, the palm open towards heaven as if in dumb prayer, in expostulation de profundis? Take pity on the sons of men. Messier saw it as he walked down the Rue Saint-Jacques from Montrouge on the morrow of the massacres, but not a hand, it was a foot, which he reckoned still more significant. One understands not well why. Or was it as the foot of one spurning heaven, rushing like a wild diver in disgust and despair towards the depths of annihilation? Even there shall his hand find thee, and his right hand hold thee, surely for right, not for wrong, for good, not evil. I saw that foot, says Mercier. I shall know it again at the great day of judgment, when the Eternal, throned on his thunders, shall judge both kings and Septemberers. That a shriek of inarticulate horror rose over this thing, not only from French aristocrats and moderates, but from all Europe, and has prolonged itself to the present day, was most natural and right. The thing lay done, irrevocable, a thing to be counted beside some other things which lie very black in our earth's annals, yet which will not erase therefrom. For man, as was remarked, has transcendentalisms in him, standing, as he does, poor creature, every way in the confluence of infinitudes, a mystery to himself and others, in the centre of two eternities, of three immensities, in the intersection of primeval light with the everlasting dark. Thus have there been, especially by vehement tempers reduced to a state of desperation, very miserable things done. Sicilian Vespers and 8,000 slaughtered in 2 hours are a known thing. Kings themselves, not in desperation, but only in difficulty, have sat hatching for year and day, nay, Devours says for 7 years, their Bartholomew business, and then at the right moment, also on an autumn Sunday, this very bell, they say it is the identical metal of Saint-Germain-l'Auxerrois, was set appealing, with effect. Nay, the same black boulder stones of these Paris prisons have seen prison massacres before now, men massacring countrymen, Burgundies massacring Armagnacs, whom they had suddenly imprisoned, till as now there are piled heaps of carcasses, and the streets ran red. The mere Pétion of the times, speaking the austere language of the law, and answered by the killers in old French, it is some 400 years old, Maugre bien, sire. Sire, God's malison on your justice, your pity, your right reason. Cursed be of God whoso shall have pity on these false traitorous Armagnacs, English. Dogs they are. They have destroyed us, wasted this realm of France, and sold it to the English. And so they slay and fling aside the flame to the extent of 1,518, among whom are found 4 bishops of false and damnable counsel, and 2 presidents of Parliament. For though it is not Satan's world, this that we live in, Satan always has his place in it, underground properly, and from time to time bursts up. Well may mankind shriek, inarticulately anathematizing as they can. There are actions of such emphasis that no shrieking can be too emphatic for them. Shriek ye, acted have they. Shriek who might, in this France, in this Paris Legislative or Paris Town Hall, there are 10 men who do not shriek. A circular goes out from the Committee of Salut Public, dated 3rd of September 1792, directed to all town halls, a state paper too remarkable to be overlooked. A part of the ferocious conspirators detained in the prisons, it says, have been put to death by the people, and it, the circular, cannot doubt but the whole nation, driven to the edge of ruin by such endless series of treasons, will make haste to adopt this means of public salvation, and all Frenchmen will cry, as the men of Paris, "We go to fight the enemy, but we will not leave robbers behind us to butcher our wives and children." To which are legibly appended these signatures: Pani, Sergeant, Marat, friend of the people, with 7 others, carried down thereby in a strange way to the late remembrance of antiquarians. We remark, however, that their circular rather recoiled on themselves. The town halls made no use of it, Even the distracted sans-culottes made little. They only howled and bellowed, but did not bite. At Rheims, about 8 persons were killed, and 2 afterwards were hanged for doing it. At Lyons and a few other places some attempt was made, but with hardly any effect, being quickly put down. Less fortunate were the prisoners of Orleans, was the good Duke de la Rochefoucauld. He, journeying by quick stages with his mother and wife towards the waters of Forges or some quieter country, was arrested at Gisors, conducted along the streets amid effervescing multitudes, and killed dead by the stroke of a paving stone hurled through the coach window. Killed as a once liberal, now aristocrat, protector of priests, suspender of virtuous pétions, and his unfortunate hot grown cold, detestable to patriotism. He dies lamented of Europe, his blood spattering the cheeks of his old mother, 93 years old. As for the Orleans prisoners, they are state criminals, royalist ministers, Delessart, Montmorin, who have been accumulating on the High Court of Orleans ever since that tribunal was set up, whom now it seems good that we should get transferred to our new Paris court of the 17th, which proceeds far quicker. Accordingly, Hot Fournier from Martinique, Fournier l'Américain, is off, missioned by constituted authority with stanch National Guards, with Lazouski the Pole sparingly provided with road money. These, through bad quarters, through difficulties, perils, for authorities cross each other in this time, do triumphantly bring off the 50 or 53 Orleans prisoners towards Paris, where a swifter court of the 17th will do justice on them. But lo, at Paris, in the interim, a still swifter and swiftest court of the 2nd and of September has instituted itself. Enter not Paris, or that will judge you. What shall Hut Fournier do? It was his duty as volunteer constable, had he been a perfect character, to guard these men's lives, never so aristocratic, at the expense of his own valuable life, never so sans-culotic, till some constituted court had disposed of them. But he was an imperfect character and constable, perhaps one of the more imperfect. Hot Fournier, ordered to turn thither by one authority, to turn thither by another authority, is in a perplexing multiplicity of orders, but finally he strikes off for Versailles. His prisoners fare in tumbrils or open carts, himself and guards riding and marching around, and at the last village the worthy mayor of Versailles comes to meet him, anxious that the arrival and locking up were well over. It is Sunday, the 9th day of the month. Lo, on entering the avenue of Versailles, what multitudes stirring, swarming in the September sun, under the dull green September foliage, the four-road avenue all humming and swarming, as if the town had emptied itself. Our tumbrils roll heavily through the living sea, the guards and Fournier making way with ever more difficulty, the mayor speaking and gesturing his persuasivest amid the inarticulate growling hum, which growls ever the deeper even by hearing itself growl, not without sharp yelpings here and there. Would to God we were out of this strait place, and wind and separation had cooled the heat which seems about igniting here. And yet if the wide avenue is too strait, what will the street de Surintendance be at leaving of the same? At the corner of Surintendance Street the compressed yelpings become a continuous yell. Savage figures spring onto the tumbril shafts, first spray of an endless coming tide. The mayor pleads, pushes, half desperate, is pushed, carried off in men's arms. The savage tide has entrance, has mastery. Amid horrid noise and tumult as of fierce wolves, the prisoners sink massacred, all but some 11, who escaped into houses and found mercy. The prisons, and what other prisoners they held, were with difficulty saved. The stripped clothes are burnt in bonfires, the corpses lie heaped in the ditch on the morrow morning. All France, except it be the 10 men of the Circular and their people, moans and rages, inarticulately shrieking. All Europe rings. But neither did Danton shriek, though, as Minister of Justice, it was more his part to do so. brawny Danton is in the breach, as of stormed cities and nations, amid the sweep of 10th of August cannon, the rustle of Prussian gallows ropes, the smiting of September sabres, destruction all round him, and the rushing down of worlds. Minister of Justice is his name, but Titan of the forlorn hope and enfant perdu of the Revolution is his quality, and the man acts according to that. We must put our enemies in fear. Deep fear, is it not, as of its own accord falling on our enemies? The Titan of the forlorn hope, he is not the man that would swiftest of all prevent its so falling. Forward, thou lost Titan of an enfant perdu. Thou must dare and again dare, and without end dare. There is nothing left for thee but that. Que mon nom soit flétri, let my name be blighted. What am I? The cause alone is great, and shall live, and not perish. So on the whole, here too is a swallower of formulas, of still wider gulp than Mirabeau. This is Danton, Mirabeau of the sans-culottes. In the September days, this minister was not heard of as cooperating with strict Roland. His business might lie elsewhere, with Brunswick and the Hôtel de Ville. When applied to by an official person about the Orleans prisoners and the risks they ran, he answered gloomily, twice over, "Are not these men guilty?" When pressed, he answered in a terrible voice and turned his back. 2,000 slain in the prisons. Horrible, if you will. But Brunswick is within a day's journey of us, and there are 25 millions yet to slay or to save. Some men have tasks frightfuler than ours. It seems strange, but is not strange, that this minister of Moloch justice, when any suppliant for a friend's life got access to him, was found to have human compassion, and yielded and granted always. Neither did one personal enemy of Danton perish in these days. To shriek, we say, when certain things are acted, is proper and unavoidable. Nevertheless, articulate speech, not shrieking, is the faculty of man. When speech is not yet possible, let there be, with the shortest delay, at least silence. Silence, accordingly, in this 44th year of the business, and 1836 of an era called Christian à Lucas Anon, is the thing we recommend and practise. Nay, instead of shrieking more, it were perhaps edifying to remark on the other side what a singular thing customs, in Latin mores, are, and how fitly the virtue, virtus, manhood or worth, that is in a man, is called his morality or customariness. Fell slaughter, one the most authentic products of the pit, you would say. Once give it customs, becomes war, with laws of war, and is customary and moral enough, and red individuals carry the tools of it girt round their haunches, not without an air of pride, which do thou nowise blame. While see, so long as it is but dressed in hodden or russet, and revolution, less frequent than war, has not yet got its laws of revolution, but the hodden or russet individuals are uncustomary. O shrieking beloved brother blockheads of mankind, let us close those wide mouths of ours, let us cease shrieking and begin considering. End of Book 1, Chapter 6. The French Revolution, A History, by Thomas Carlyle, Volume 3, The Guillotine, Book 1, September, Chapter 7, September in Argonne. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Peter Dann. Book 1, Chapter 7, September in Argonne. Plain at any rate is one thing, that the fear, whatever of fear those aristocrat enemies might need, has been brought about. The matter is getting serious, then. Sans-culottism, too, has become a fact, and seems minded to assert itself as such. This huge moon-calf of sans-culottism, staggering about as young calves do, is not mockable only, and soft like another calf, but terrible too, if you prick it, and through its hideous nostrils blows fire. Aristocrats, with pale panic in their hearts, fly towards covert. and a light rises to them over several things, or rather a confused transition towards light, whereby for the moment darkness is only darker than ever. But what will become of this France? Here is a question. France is dancing its desert waltz as Sahara does when the winds waken, in whirl-blasts 25 million in number, waltzing towards town halls, aristocrat prisons and election committee rooms, towards Brunswick and the frontiers, towards a new chapter of universal history, if indeed it be not the finis and winding up of that. In election committee rooms there is now no dubiety, but the work goes bravely along. The convention is getting chosen, really in a decisive spirit. In the town hall we already date first year of the Republic. Some 200 of our best legislators may be re-elected, the mountain bodily. Robespierre with Mayor Pétion, Buzot, Curate Grégoire, Rabot, some 80 old constituents, though we once had only 30 voices. All these, and along with them, friends long known to revolutionary fame. Camille Desmoulins, though he stutters in speech, Manuel, Tallien and company, journalists Gaussat, Carrat, Messier, Louvet of Faublas, Clout, speaker of mankind, Collot d'Herbois, tearing a passion to rags, Fabre d'Eglantine, speculative pamphleteer, Legendre, the solid butcher, nay, Marat, though rural France can hardly believe it, or even believe that there is a Marat, except in print. Of Minister Danton, who will lay down his ministry for a membership, we need not speak. Paris is fervent, nor is the country wanting to itself. Barbaroux, Rebecki, and fervid patriots are coming from Marseille. 745 men, or indeed 49, for Avignon now sends 4, are gathering. So many are to meet, not so many are to part. Attorney Carrière from Aurillac, ex-priest Le Bon from Arras, these shall both gain a name. Mountainess Auvergne re-elects her Rome, hardly tiller of the soil, once mathematical professor, who, unconscious, carries in petto a remarkable new calendar, with Messidor, Pluviose, and such like, and having given it well forth, shall depart by the death they call Roman. Sieyes, old constituent, comes to make new constitutions, as many as wanted. For the rest, peering out of his clear, cautious eyes, he will cower low in many an emergency and find silence safest. Young Saint-Just is coming, deputed for Aisne in the north, more like a student than a senator, not 24 yet, who has written books, a youth of slight stature, with mild, mellow voice, enthusiast olive complexion, and long dark hair. Ferraud from the far valley d'Oire in the folds of the Pyrenees is coming, an ardent republican, doomed to fame, at least in death. All manner of patriot men are coming, teachers, husbandmen, priests and ex-priests, traders, doctors, above all talkers, or the attorney species. Man midwives, as Levasseur of the south, are not wanting, nor artists. Gross David with the swollen cheek has long painted, with genius in a state of convulsion, and will now legislate. The swollen cheek, choking his words in the birth, totally disqualifies him as an orator, but his pencil, his head, his gross hot heart, with genius in a state of convulsion, will be there. A man bodily and mentally swollen-cheeked, disproportionate, flabby large instead of great, weak withal as in a state of convulsion, not strong in a state of composure. So let him play his part. Nor are naturalized benefactors of the species forgotten. Priestley, elected by the Orne department, but declining. Paine, the rebellious needleman by the Pas de Calais, who accepts. Few nobles come, and yet not none. Paul-François Barras, noble as the Barasses, old as the rocks of Provence. He is one. The reckless shipwrecked man, flung ashore on the coast of the Maldives long ago while sailing and soldiering as Indian fighter, flung ashore since then as hungry Parisian pleasure hunter and half-pay on many a Circe island, with temporary enchantment, temporary conversion into beasthood and hoghood, the remote Var department has now sent him hither. A man of heat and haste, defective in utterance, defective indeed in anything to utter, yet not without a certain rapidity of glance, a certain swift transient courage, who in these times, fortune favouring, may go far. He is tall, handsome to the eye, only the complexion a little yellow. But with a robe of purple, with a scarlet cloak and plume of tricolour, on occasions of solemnity, the man will look well. Le Pelletier Saint-Fargeau, old constituent, is a kind of noble and of enormous wealth. He too has come hither, to have the pain of death abolished. Hapless ex-parlementaire! Nay, among our 60 old constituents, see Philip d'Orléans, a prince of the blood. Not now d'Orléans, for feudalism being swept from the world, he demands of his worthy friends, the electors of Paris, to have a new name of their choosing. Whereupon Procureur Manuel, like an antithetic literary man, recommends equality, égalité. A Philippe Égalité therefore will sit, scene of the earth and heaven. Such a convention is gathering itself together. Mere angry poultry in moulting season, whom Brunswick's grenadiers and cannoneers will give short account of. Would the weather only mend a little! In vain, O Bertrand, the weather will not mend a whit, nay, even if it did. Dumurier Polymatus, though Bertrand knows it not, started from brief slumber at Sedan on that morning on the 29th of August, with stealthiness, with promptitude, audacity. Some 3 mornings after that, Brunswick, opening wide eyes, perceives the passes of the Argonne all seized, blocked with felled trees, fortified with camps, and that it is a most shifty, swift Dumouriez this, who has outwitted him. The manoeuvre may cost Brunswick a loss of 3 weeks, very fatal in these circumstances. A mountain wall of 40 miles lying between him and Paris, which he should have preoccupied, which how now to get possession of? Also the rain, it raineth every day, and we are in a hungry Champagne poileuse, a land flowing only with ditch water. How to cross this mountain wall of the Argonne, and what in the world to do with it? There are marchings and wet splashings by steep paths, with sacraments and guttural interjections, forcings of Argonne passes, which unhappily will not force. Through the woods volleying war reverberates, like huge gong music or Moloch's kettle-drum, borne by the echoes. Swollen torrents boil angrily round the foot of rocks, floating pale carcasses of men. In vain! Illet village, with its church steeple, rises intact in the mountain pass between the embosoming heights. Your forced marchings and climbings have become forced slidings and tumblings back. From the hilltops thou seest nothing but dumb crags and endless wet moaning woods, the Clermont Vache, huge cow that she is, disclosing herself at intervals, flinging off her cloud blanket and soon taking it on again, drowned in the pouring heaven. The Argonne passes will not force. You must skirt the Argonne, go round by the end of it. But fancy whether the emigrant seigneurs have not got their brilliancy dulled a little, whether that foot regiment in red facings with nankeen trousers could be in field day order. In place of gasconading, a sort of desperation and hydrophobia from excess of water is threatening to supervene. Young Prince de Lagne, son of that brave literary de Lagne, the thunder god of dandies, fell backwards, shot dead in Grand Pré, the northmost of the passes. Brunswick is skirting and rounding laboriously by the extremity of the south. 4 days, days of a reign as of Noah, without fire, without food. For fire you cut down green trees and produce smoke. For food you eat green grapes and produce colic, pestilential dysentery, holocausto tele. And the peasants assassinate us. They do not join us. Shrill women cry shame on us, threaten to draw their very scissors on us. O ye hapless, dull, bright seigneurs and hydrophobic splashed nankeens, but oh, 10 times more, ye poor sack-commenting, ghastly-visaged Hessians and Uhlans fallen on your backs, who had no call to die there except compulsion and 3 halfpence a day. Nor has Mrs. Leblanc of the Golden Arm a good time of it in her bower of dripping rushes. Assassinating peasants are hanged, old constituent honourable members, though of venerable age, ride in carts with their hands tied. These are the woes of war. Thus they, sprawling and wriggling far and wide on the slopes and passes of the Argonne, are lost to Brunswick of 25 disastrous days. There is wriggling and struggling, facing, backing, and right about facing as the positions shift and the Argonne gets partly rounded, partly forced, but still Dumouriez, force him round him as you will, sticks like a rooted fixture on the ground, fixture with many hinges, wheeling now this way, now that, showing always new front in the most unexpected manner, nowise consenting to take himself away. Recruits stream up on him full of heart, yet rather difficult to deal with. Behind Grandpré, for example, Grandpré which is on the wrong side of the Argonne, for we are now forced and rounded, the full heart in one of those wheelings and showings of new front did, as it were, overset itself, as full hearts are liable to do, and there rose a shriek of Sauve qui peut, and a death panic which had nigh ruined all. So that the general had to come galloping, and with thunder words, with gesture, stroke of drawn sword even, check and rally, and bring back the sense of shame, nay, to seize the first shriekers and ringleaders, shave their heads and eyebrows, and pack them forth into the world as a sign. Thus too, for really the rations are short, and wet camping with hungry stomach brings bad humour, there is like to be mutiny. Whereupon again Dumouriez arrives at the head of their line with his staff and an escort of 100 hussars. He had placed some squadrons behind them, the artillery in front. He said to them, "As for you, for I will neither call you citizens nor soldiers nor my men, ni mes enfants, you see before you this artillery, behind you this cavalry. You have dishonoured yourselves by crimes. If you amend and grow to behave like this brave army which you have the honour of belonging to, you will find in me a good father, but plunderers and assassins I do not suffer here. At the smallest mutiny I'll have you shivered in pieces, hachés en pièces. Seek out the scoundrels that are among you and dismiss them yourselves. I hold you responsible for them." Patience, old Dumouriez! This uncertain heap of shriekers, mutineers, were they once drilled and inured, will become a phalanxed mass of fighters, and wheel and whirl to order, swiftly like the wind or the whirlwind, tanned mustachio figures, often barefoot, even bare-backed, with sinews of iron, who require only bread and gunpowder, very sons of fire, the adroitest, hastiest, hottest ever seen perhaps since Attila's time. They may conquer and overrun amazingly, much as that same Attila did, whose Attila's camp and battlefield thou now seest on this very ground, who, after sweeping bare the world, was, with difficulty and days of tough fighting, checked here by Roman Aetius and fortune, and his dust cloud made to vanish in the east again. Strangely enough, in this shrieking confusion of a soldiery, which we saw long since fallen all suicidally out of square in suicidal collision, at Nancy or on the streets of Metz, where brave Bouillet stood with drawn sword, and which has collided and ground itself to pieces worse and worse ever since, down now to such a state, in this shrieking confusion and not elsewhere, lies the first germ of returning order for France, round which we say, poor France, nearly all ground down suicidally likewise into rubbish and chaos, will be glad to rally, to begin growing and new shaping her inorganic dust. Very slowly, through centuries, through Napoleons, Louis Philippes, and other the like media and phases, into a new, infinitely preferable France, we can hope. These wheelings and movements in the region of the Argonne, which are all faithfully described by Du Maurier himself, and more interesting to us than Hoyle's or Philidor's best game of chess, let us nevertheless, O reader, entirely omit, and hasten to remark two things. The first a minute private, the second a large public thing. Our minute private thing is the presence in the Prussian host, in that war game of the Argonne, of a certain man belonging to the sort called immortal, who in days since then is becoming visible more and more in that character as the transitory more and more vanishes. For from of old it was remarked that when the gods appear among men, it is seldom in recognizable shape. Thus Admetus's neat-herds give Apollo a draught of their goat-skin whey-bottle, well if they do not give him strokes with their ox-rungs, not dreaming that he is the sun-god. This man's name is Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. He is Herzog Weimar's minister, come with the small contingent of Weimar to do insignificant unmilitary duty here, very irrecognizable to nearly all. He stands at present with drawn bridle on the height near St. Menehould, making an experiment on the cannon fever, having ridden thither against persuasion into the dance and firing of the cannon balls, with a scientific desire to understand what that same cannon fever may be. The sound of them, says he, is curious enough, as if it were compounded of the humming of tops, the gurgling of water, and the whistle of birds. By degree you get a very uncommon sensation, which can only be described by similitude. It seems as if you were in some place extremely hot, and at the same time were completely penetrated by the heat of it, so that you feel as if you and this element you are in were perfectly on a par. The eyesight loses nothing of its strength or distinctness, and yet it is as if all things had got a kind of brown-red colour, which makes the situation and the object still more impressive on you. This is the cannon fever, as the world poet feels it. A man entirely irrecognizable, in whose irrecognizable head, meanwhile, there verily is the spiritual counterpart, and call it complement, of this same huge death-birth of the world, which now effectuates itself outwardly in the Argonne in such cannon thunder, inwardly in the irrecognizable head, quite otherwise than by thunder. Mark that man, O reader, as the memorablest of all the memorable in this Argonne campaign. What we say of him is not dream nor flourish of rhetoric, but scientific historic fact, as many men now at this distance see or begin to see. But the large public thing we had to remark is this, that the 20th of September 1792 was a raw morning covered with mist, that from 3 in the morning St. Menehould and those villages and homesteads we know of old were stirred by the rumble of artillery wagons, by the clatter of hoofs and many-footed tramp of men, all manner of military, patriot and Prussian, taking up positions on the heights of La Lune and other heights, shifting and shoving, seemingly in some dread chess game which may the heavens turn to good. The miller of Valmy has fled dusty underground. His mill, were it never so windy, will have rest to-day. At 7 in the morning the mist clears off. See Kellerman, Du Maurier's second in command, with 18 pieces of cannon and deep serried ranks drawn up round that same silent windmill on his knoll of strength. Brunswick also with serried ranks and cannon, glooming over to him from the height of La Lune, only the little brook and its little dell now parting them. So that the much longed for has come at last. Instead of hunger and dysentery we shall have sharp shot, and then Du Maurier, with force and firm front, looks on from a neighbouring height, can help only with his wishes, in silence. Lo, the 18 pieces do bluster and bark responsive to the bluster of La Lune, and thunderclouds mount into the air, and echoes roar through all dells far into the depths of Argonne Wood, deserted now, and limbs and lives of men fly dissipated this way and that. Can Brunswick make an impression on them? The dull bright seigneurs stand biting their thumbs. These sans-culottes seem not to fly like poultry. Towards noontide a cannon shot blows Kellerman's horse from under him. There bursts a powder cart high into the air, with knell heard over all, some swaggering and swaying observable. Brunswick will try. "Camarades," cries Kellerman, "vive la patrie! Allons vaincre pour elle! Let us conquer!" "Live the fatherland!" rings responsive to the welcome, like rolling fire from side to side. Our ranks are as firm as rocks, and Brunswick may recross the dell, ineffectual, regain his old position on La Lune, not unbattered by the way. And so, for the length of a September day, with bluster and bark, with bellow far echoing, the cannonade lasts till sunset, and no impression made. Till an hour after sunset, the few remaining clocks of the district striking 7 at this late time of day, Brunswick tries again. With not a whit better fortune, he is met by rock ranks, by shouts of "Vive la patrie!" and driven back, not unbattered. Whereupon he ceases, retires to the tavern of La Lune, and sets to raising a redoubt lest he be attacked. Verily so, ye dulled bright seigneurs, make of it what ye may. Ah, and France does not rise round us in mass, and the peasants do not join us, but assassinate us. Neither hanging nor any persuasion will induce them. They have lost their old distinguishing love of king and king's cloak, I fear, altogether, and will even fight to be rid of it. That seems now their humour. Nor does Austria prosper, nor the siege of Thionville. The Thionvilles, carrying their insolence to the epigrammatic pitch, have put a wooden horse on their walls, with a bundle of hay hung from him, and this inscription: "When I finish my hay, you will take Thionville." To such height has the frenzy of mankind risen. The trenches of Thionville may shut, and what though those of Lille open? The earth smiles not on us, nor the heaven, but weeps and blears itself in sour rain and worse. Our very friends insult us. We are wounded in the house of our friends. His Majesty of Prussia had a great coat when the rain came, and, contrary to all known laws, he put it on, though our 2 French princes, the hope of their country, had none. To which indeed, as Goethe admits, what answer could be made? Cold and hunger and affront, colic and dysentery and death, and we here cowering, redoubted, most unredoubtable, amid the tattered corn shocks and deformed stubble on the splashy heights of La Lune, round the mean Taverne de la Lune. This is the cannonade of Valmy, wherein the world poet experimented on the cannon fever, wherein the French sans-culottes did not fly like poultry. Precious to France, every soldier did his duty, and Alsatian Kellerman, how preferable to old Luckner the dismissed, began to become greater, and Egalite Fils, Equality Junior, a light gallant field officer, distinguished himself by intrepidity. It is the same intrepid individual who now, as Louis Philippe, without the equality, struggles, under sad circumstances, to be called King of the French for a season. End of Book 1, Chapter 7. The French Revolution, A History, by Thomas Carlyle, Volume 3, The Guillotine, Book 1, September, Chapter 8, Exeunt. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. Read by Peter Dann. Book 1, Chapter 8, Exeunt. But this 20th of September is otherwise a great day. For observe, while Kellerman's horse was flying blown from under him at the mill of Valmy, our new national deputies, that shall be a national convention, are hovering and gathering about the hall of the 100 Swiss, with intent to constitute themselves. On the morrow, about noontide, Camus, the archivist, is busy verifying their powers, several hundreds of them already here. Whereupon the old legislative comes solemnly over to merge its old ashes phoenix-like in the body of the new, and so forthwith, returning all solemnly back to the salle de manège, there sits a national convention, 749 complete or complete enough, presided by Pétion, which proceeds directly to do business. Read that reported afternoon's debate, O reader. There are few debates like it. Dull reporting Moniteur itself becomes more dramatic than a very Shakespeare. For epigrammatic Manuel rises, speaks strange things, how the President shall have a guard of honour and lodge in the Tuileries. Rejected. And Danton rises and speaks, and Collot d'Herbois rises, and Curate Gregoire and Lame Couton of the Mountain rises, and in rapid Melibbean stanzas, only a few lines each, they propose motions not a few. That the cornerstone of our new constitution is sovereignty of the people, that our constitution shall be accepted by the people or be null. Further, that the people ought to be avenged and have right judges, that the imposts must continue till new order, that landed and other property be sacred forever. Finally, that royalty from this day is abolished in France. Decreed all before 4 o'clock strike with acclamation of the world. The tree was all so ripe, only shake it, and there fall such yellow cartloads. And so, in the Valmy region, as soon as the news come, what stir is this, audible, visible from our muddy heights of La Lune? Universal shouting of the French on their opposite hillside, caps raised on bayonets, and a sound as of "République! Vive la République!" borne dubious on the winds. On the morrow morning, so to speak, Brunswick slings his knapsacks before day, lights any fires he has, and marches without tap of drum. Dumouriez finds ghastly symptoms in that camp, latrines full of blood. The chivalrous King of Prussia, for he, as we saw, is here in person, may long rue the day, may look colder than ever on these dull bright seigneurs and French princes, their country's hope, and on the whole put on his greatcoat without ceremony, happy that he has one. They retire, all retire, with convenient dispatch, through a champagne trodden into a quagmire, the wild weather pouring on them. Dumouriez, through his Kellermans and Dions, pricking them a little in the hinder parts. A little, not much. Now pricking, now negotiating, for Brunswick has his eyes opened, and the majesty of Prussia is a repentant majesty. Nor has Austria prospered, nor the wooden horse of Thionville bitten his hay, nor Lille city surrendered itself. The Lille trenches opened on the 29th of the month, with balls and shells and red-hot balls, as if not trenches, but Vesuvius and the pit had opened. It was frightful, say all eye-witnesses, but it is ineffectual. The Lilles have risen to such temper, especially after these news from Argonne and the East. Not a sans indispensables in Lille that would surrender for a king's ransom. Red-hot balls rain day and night, 6,000 or so, and bombs filled internally with oil of turpentine, which splashes up in flame, mainly on the dwellings of the sans-culottes and poor, the streets of the rich being spared. But the sans-culottes get water pails, form quenching regulations. The ball is in Peter's house, the ball is in John's. They divide their lodging and substance with each other, shout "Vive la République!" and faint not in heart. A ball thunders through the main chamber of the Hôtel de Ville, while the Commune is there assembled. "We are in permanent," says one coldly, proceeding with his business, and the ball remains permanent too, sticking in the wall, probably to this day. The Austrian Archduchess, Queen's sister, will herself see red artillery fired. In their overhaste to satisfy an Archduchess, 2 mortars explode and kill 30 persons. It is in vain. Lille, often burning, is always quenched again. Lille will not yield. The very boys deftly wrench the matches out of fallen bombs. A man clutches a rolling ball with his hat, which takes fire. When cool, they crown it with a bonnet rouge. Memorable also be that nimble barber, who, when the bomb burst beside him, snatched up a shred of it, introduced soap and lather into it, crying, "Voilà mon plat à barbe," my new shaving dish, and shaved 14 people on the spot. Bravo, the nimble shaver, worthy to shave old spectral Red Cloak and find treasures. On the 8th day of this desperate siege, the 6th day of October, Austria, finding it fruitless, draws off, with no pleasurable consciousness, rapidly Dumouriez tending thitherward, and Lille too, black with ashes and smoulder, but jubilant sky-high, flings its gates open. The Place d'Arbarbe became fashionable. No patriot of an elegant turn, says Mercier several years afterwards, but shaves himself out of the splinter of a Lille bomb. Quid multa? Why many words? The invaders are in flight. Brunswick's host, the third part of it gone to death, staggers disastrous along the steep highways of Champagne, spreading out also into the fields of a tough, spongy, red-coloured clay, like Pharaoh through a red sea of mud, says Goethe, for he also lay broken chariots and riders, and foot seemed sinking around. On the 11th morning of October, the world poet, struggling northwards out of Verdun, which he had entered southward some 5 weeks ago in quite other order, discerned the following phenomenon, and formed part of it. Towards 3 in the morning, without having had any sleep, we were about mounting our carriage, drawn up at the door, when an insuperable obstacle disclosed itself, for there rolled on already between the pavement stones, which were crushed up into a ridge on each side, an uninterrupted column of sick waggons through the town, and all was trodden as into a morass. While we stood waiting what could be made of it, our landlord, the Knight of St. Louis, pressed past us without salutation. He had been a Calonne's notable in 1787, an emigrant since, had returned to his home jubilant with the Prussians, but must now forth again into the wide world, followed by a servant carrying a little bundle on his stick. The activity of our alert Lisieux shone eminent, and on this occasion too brought us on, for he struck into a small gap of the waggon row, and held the advancing team back till we, with our 6 and our 4 horses, got intercalated, after which, in my light little coachlet, I could breathe freer. We are now under way, at a funeral pace, but still under way. The day broke, we found ourselves at the outlet of the town, in a tumult and turmoil without measure. All sorts of vehicles, few horsemen, innumerable foot people, were crossing each other on the great esplanade before the gate. We turned to the right with our column towards Estaing, on a limited highway, with ditches at each side. Self-preservation in so monstrous a press knew now no pity, no respect of aught. Not far before us there fell down a horse of an ammunition waggon. They cut the traces and let it lie. And now, as the 3 others could not bring their load along, they cut them also loose, tumbled the heavy-packed vehicle into the ditch, and with the smallest retardation we had to drive on, right over the horse, which was just about to rise, and I saw too clearly how its legs under the wheels went crashing and quivering. Horse and foot endeavoured to escape from the narrow, laborious highway into the meadows, but these too were rained to ruin, overflowed by full ditches, the connection of the footpaths everywhere interrupted. 4 gentlemanlike, handsome, well-dressed French soldiers waded for a time beside our carriage, wonderfully clean and neat, and had such art of picking their steps that their footgear testified no higher than the ankle to the muddy pilgrimage these good people found themselves engaged in. That under such circumstances one saw in ditches, in meadows, in fields and crofts, dead horses enough, was natural to the case. By and by, however, you found them also flayed, the fleshly parts even cut away, sad token of the universal distress. Thus we fared on, every moment in danger, at the smallest stoppage on our own part, of being ourselves tumbled overboard, under which circumstances, truly, the careful dexterity of our Lisieux could not be sufficiently praised. The same talent showed itself at Estaing, where we arrived towards noon, and descried over the beautiful, well-built little town, through streets and on squares, around and beside us, one sense-confusing tumult. The mass rolled this way and that, and all struggling forward, each hindered the other. Unexpectedly our carriage drew up before a stately house in the market-place. Master and mistress of the mansion saluted us in reverent distance. Dexterously so, though we knew it not, had said we were the King of Prussia's brother. But now from the ground floor windows, looking over the whole marketplace, we had the endless tumult lying, as it were, palpable. All sorts of walkers, soldiers in uniform, marauders, stout but sorrowing citizens and peasants, women and children, crushed and jostled each other amid vehicles of all forms. Ammunition wagons, baggage wagons, carriages, single, double and multiplex, such hundredfold miscellany of teams requisitioned or lawfully owned, making way, hitting together, hindering each other, rolled here to right and to left. Horned cattle, too, were struggling on, probably herds that had been put in requisition. Riders you saw few, but the elegant carriages of the emigrants, many-coloured, lacquered, gilt and silvered, evidently by the best builders, caught your eye. The crisis of the strait, however, arose further on a little, where the crowded marketplace had to introduce itself into a street, straight indeed and good, but proportionably far too narrow. I have in my life seen nothing like it. The aspect of it might perhaps be compared to that of a swollen river which has been raging over meadows and fields and is now again obliged to press itself through a narrow bridge and flow on in its bounded channel. Down the long street, all visible from our windows, there swelled continually the strangest tide. A high double-seated travelling coach towered visible over the flood of things. We thought of the fair Frenchwomen we had seen in the morning. It was not they, however, it was Count Haugwitz, him you could look at with a kind of sardonic malice, rocking onwards step by step there. In such untriumphant procession has the Brunswick Manifesto issued. Nay, in worse, in negotiation with these miscreants, the first news of which produced such a revulsion in the emigrant nature as put our scientific world poet in fear for the wits of several. There is no help, they must fare on, these poor emigrants, angry with all persons and things, and making all persons angry in the hapless course they struck into. Landlord and landlady testify to you at tables d'hôte how insupportable these Frenchmen are, how, in spite of such humiliation, of poverty and probable beggary, there is ever the same struggle for precedence, the same forwardness and want of discretion. High in honour, at the head of the table, you with your own eyes observe not a seigneur, but the automaton of a seigneur, fallen into dotage, still worshipped, reverently waited on, and fed. In miscellaneous seats is a miscellany of soldiers, commissaries, adventurers, consuming silently their barbarian victuals. On all brows is to be read a hard destiny. All are silent, for each has his own sufferings to bear, and looks forth into misery without bounds. One hasty wanderer coming in and eating without ungraciousness what is set before him, the landlord lets off almost scot-free. He is, whispered the landlord to me, the first of these cursed people I have seen condescend to taste our German black bread. And Dumouriez is in Paris, lauded and feasted, paraded in glittering saloons, floods of beautifulest blonde dresses and broadcloth coats flowing past him, endless in admiring joy. One night, nevertheless, in the splendour of one such scene, he sees himself suddenly apostrophized by a squalid, unjoyful figure, who has come in uninvited, nay, despite of all lackeys, an unjoyful figure. The figure is come in express mission from the Jacobins to inquire sharply, better then than later, touching certain things. Shaven eyebrows of volunteer patriots, for instance? Also, your threats of shivering in pieces? Also, why you have not chased Brunswick hotly enough? Thus, with sharp croak, inquires the figure, Ah, c'est vous qu'on appelle Marat. You are he they call Marat, answers the general, and turns coldly on his heel. Marat! The blonde gowns quiver like aspens, the dress coats gather round. Actor Talma, for it is his house, and almost the very chandelier lights are blue, till this obscene spectrum or visual appearance vanish back into native night. General Dumouriez, in few brief days, is gone again towards the Netherlands, will attack the Netherlands, winter though it be. and General Montesquieu on the southeast has driven in the Sardinian Majesty, nay, almost without a shot fired, has taken Savoy from him, which longs to become a piece of the Republic. And General Custine on the northeast has dashed forth on Spires in its arsenal, and then on electoral Mentz, not uninvited, wherein are German Democrats and no shadow of an elector now, so that in the last days of October, Frau Forster, a daughter of Heinz, somewhat democratic, walking out of the gate of Mentz with her husband, finds French soldiers playing at bowls with cannonballs there. Forster trips cheerfully over one iron bomb with "Live the Republic." A black-bearded National Guard answers, "Elle vivra bien sans vous." It will probably live independently of you. End of Book 1, Chapter 8.